Ben, what do you got for us?
You may remember me from this video where I told you about 40,000 of these things that your tax dollars pay for that are tracking your every move and repurposing data collected about you every time that you drive past them. Upon further investigation, it turns out that there are over 80,000 of them. And we got some and we hacked them. You can press a button a few times on the back of these cameras and within a few minutes, turn them into your own personal spy device, or malware host, or honeypot that steals people's login credentials, or a cryptocurrency miner, whatever you want, really. Or alternatively, how you can point an antenna at them and decode the video stream using a technique used by the CIA during the Cold War. Or how another researcher found a Google search phrase that had the capabilities of showing you the real-time location of these cameras and police patrol cars. This isn't clickbait or an exaggerated claim with no payoff. Just the other day, weeks before this video will be released, US senators and representatives drafted an official letter to open an investigation that highlights the national security risks associated with our findings. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how they work and even demonstrate them to journalists. No f***ing way! And finally, we're going to take a deep data dive into the efficacy, misinformation, and straight up lies surrounding some private surveillance startups, and we're going to use that momentum to push for protocols and legislation that actually makes you safer. Wow, that's a lot for a YouTube video.
That's my favorite AI song.
The meat and potatoes of this video will be mostly in parody with John Gainsek's white paper, and that's linked in the description below. Many of these vulnerabilities were recently published with the National Vulnerability Database or are in the process of publication. And to prevent the average viewer from getting lost or falling asleep, I'm going to keep many of the formalities and extensive details to a minimum, but if you find yourself wanting more details at any time in this video, just check the description for a whole bunch of links. Welcome to the world of responsible disclosure. And while I'm up here, let me tell you that to the best of my knowledge, any of the cameras or hardware seen in this video were acquired legally. I have not shared or redistributed any of the data on them, and as long as they are in my possession, they will not be placed into the wild. At no point in time have I knowingly accessed or interfered with any server or service related to or owned by Flock Safety. There is a chance that all of the devices that you see in this video, or all of the devices that we have acquired from multiple different sources, are unique and do not have the same hardware or software that the devices in the wild have. I have no idea how or why that would be the case, but it is technically a possibility. And finally, at the time of me recording this, there are 47 security issues covered, with the vast majority listed in the white paper. In this video, I'm going to be showing you 6 of them. Over the last summer, when doing research for my first video on this topic, I started poking around to see if anyone had done an independent audit of Flock Safety or related services. This naturally led me to the dark web, where I have access to some semi-private communities dedicated to hacking and open source intelligence. Some of these communities have well-organized marketplaces for breached data, credentials, exploits, and all that stuff. And that is where I found this. Please excuse the poor English translation, but these were law enforcement Flock Safety accounts for sale with escrow protection by a reputable vendor. And a few days later, the listings were removed in a way that suggested that someone had bought them. Not long after that, I got in touch with a professional security researcher regarding other things on this list, and what do you know? He found something very similar on the dark web.
So in the cyber industry, there are things called
The web is so dark where this guy's at. Holy shit.
access brokers. And some people specialize in government agencies or maybe local law enforcement.
I started digging more to find out where these accounts could have come from. Were they bought or stolen off of a police officer or a Flock employee? Or just maybe Flock Safety had some security vulnerabilities. The most significant and troublesome and mind-boggling vulnerability on this list was discovered nearly a year ago.
Late 2024, I stumbled down a rabbit hole, and then probably a few nights later, was messing with the buttons and the dip
This guy's AI, by the way. That's the big twist at the end. I can already predict it. He's going to say this guy was AI the whole time.
switch, and then was able to figure out how to get a shell on it. Yeah, so I'm John Gainsek Gaines. Professionally, I've been in the offensive security field for over a decade.
Obtaining shell on a device means that you can remote control it, exfiltrate data, and escalate privileges, which is exactly what John did. As detailed on John's blog and formerly published paper, John had found a user named Cager on social media who was trying to recreate some of the disclosures. He reported that by merely pressing the button on a device in a particular sequence on a Flock Safety camera, a wireless access point is created.
Hey partner, don't do any of this stuff unless you can legally acquire a Flock Safety camera. If you do this to one of the 80,000 all over the US of A, you'll be put in the clink. First thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and press the button to turn on that police camera. Then press the button on the back a number of times I can't disclose in this video. There she is, the Flock wireless access point. Go on and connect. Send a command to enable ADB. Connect. And now you can connect to the Flock safety device and access its data. Or install whatever the hell you want on it. Have fun!
This, along with John's previous discoveries, are encapsulated in an easy-to-use tool that he made so even a novice user could obtain full control of the cameras. We let George Cheedy from The Guardian do the honors.
The longest part actually is waiting for the hotspot to turn on, but realistically in about 5 seconds. And in fact, with the compute box, you don't need to hit the buttons because the USB-C ports are exposed, so you can just plug in a rubber ducky and then walk away.
A rubber ducky, sometimes referred to as a bad USB, is a USB drive that a computer or device detects as a USB keyboard and then execute scripts called payloads. One can make a device like this for as little as $5. This quite literally raises the limit of how one could use Flock safety devices to their imagination. You can clone or decompile the apps. You could send the video stream data to a remote server. You could use it as a botnet client for malware. You could have it capture Wi-Fi handshake credentials and do middleman or honeypot attacks, or replace or modify captured footage or images. And if that is the case, this could bring into question the integrity of the data being used as admissible evidence in court, like in general, unless of course a prosecutor could prove that a security breach wasn't detected.
That's why you have to use the crypto hash that Jesus Pena tells us about, okay?
And about that.
The apps that are installed that are custom of the vendor all have debug enabled, which on these types of devices, on Android devices, means that you can pause them in runtime and modify the memory, right? Which gives you system injection. System can write properties, and in this case, there's one that you can modify, a cleanup script that is ran as root. You can consider it either a wireless RCE or a gated wireless RCE that goes from no access to root, which is the worst case.
This means that malicious code can be installed and
Who could even do this hacker shit? No, this is some nerd shit. No one would actually do this, okay?
executed outside of the operating system. So like when you first turn on a computer and see the BIOS screen where the system does its little self-check, it could exist right there, acting as a superior to Windows or iOS or whatever it is that you're booting into. Multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication or two-step verification.
What are these cameras? This sounds like security, no offense, but I don't know why I just said no offense. I guess if you're working on this. This sounds like devices from the year like 2010. There was this time period where everything started to become a computer and there was wireless access, Bluetooth access to everything. And you could just use the most basic bitch exploits or vulnerabilities to literally gain root on any fucking device that had a Bluetooth chip in it. Like it was just the most retarded thing ever. And then even before that, in the 2000s, everything's password was just like admin and then nothing, or admin password or admin admin. And you could gain access to wireless access points, to routers, to whatever else. Like everything was just retardedly easy to get into. Having devices like this that are by default configured, one with a with a, what would you say, with an admin account, with a root account, with a shell access account or whatever, and then all these apps that are running with permissions to, you know, inject stuff as deep as you can go to give you, I guess, what would you say, kernel access, or basically, I guess, root on the whole machine. Like, this sounds like old shit that is never supposed to be made this way anymore. Who's making these? I feel like people generally don't make devices this insecure. Like, are Raspberry Pis by default even this insecure? I don't know. I guess that's just a computer. I actually don't know anything about it. I shouldn't say that.
Computer and see the BIOS screen where the system does its little self-check, it could exist right there, acting as a superior to Windows or iOS or whatever it is that you're booting into. Multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication or two-step.
Is there a point in securing random outside cameras? Everything should be as secure as it needs to be. The point is not, give me a reason to make this secure. I think the concept of access control is, what are the minimum permissions this user needs to run whatever the user needs to run? Because when you start making shit that's just insecure, like, it doesn't matter, then as soon as you run into an issue where it's like, okay, I need to gate this or something, well, now you've got a whole line of insecure bullshit that's fucked. Why would you?
Verification is part of our daily lives. We use it when we log into everything from Gmail to TikTok to our banks and nearly everything in between. But not all 2FA is equal, and different types have their own strengths and weaknesses. For example, some 2FAs simply pop up on your phone or
The basic rule is, if you can get physical access to a device, pretty much any device you can hack it. That was true a long time ago, but that shouldn't be the case anymore today. With some exceptions. I feel like there might be some like social engineering aspect to it. Like if you can get physical access to somebody's computer, you could like install a camera or a phone to measure keystrokes and then steal somebody's password like that, maybe. But Destiny pretty much is, no, stop, shut the fuck up. No, that is not the case. If you have an encrypted drive, you can't just hack that because you have physical access to the device. Stop saying retarded shit. That's not true. Simply having physical access to a device does not guarantee that you magically have access to everything in the device. That's not true. That's not the case, okay?
Your desktop and ask you if you just logged in from a certain device or region, in which you can approve or decline the new device. This is an excellent security protocol if you're sitting at home and can't.
Most software engineers suck shit when it comes to securing their products, especially with LOT devices. That's not, I don't even know what LOT means. IoT? Inception of Theodon devices? Oh, Internet of Things. Sure, but I mean, the software developers shouldn't have to be good at securing things, right? Shouldn't the platforms that they build on should like have that shit built in, right? Like you would expect, like I don't even know how the fuck app design works, but whatever environment you're working in or platforms, like all this stuff should be ideally like baked in automatically. So the software dev shouldn't have to know how to do like custom security implementations or proprietary security implementations or whatever the fuck you're working on. It would be my imagination, but
approve or decline the new device. This is an excellent security protocol if you're sitting at home in Kansas and see that somebody from Bangladesh just used your password. But if I'm sitting in your driveway in Kansas, or especially if I'm using your Wi-Fi using a device like this, I can clone your Wi-Fi signal and then send a deauthorization or deauth signal to your device's MAC address. Either you will notice this and decline the new if you've just logged in. For example, some 2FAs simply pop up on your phone or your desktop and ask you if you've just logged in from a certain device or region, in which you can approve or decline the new device. This is an excellent security protocol if you're sitting at home in Kansas and see that somebody from Bangladesh just used your password. But if I'm sitting in your driveway in Kansas, or especially if I'm using your Wi-Fi using a device like this, I can clone your Wi-Fi signal and then send a deauthorization or deauth signal to your device's MAC address. Either you will notice this and try to reconnect, or your computer or phone will automatically reconnect, and now you'd be accessing your own network through my device. I could use a script to clone the login page of whatever credentials I'm trying to get, and then feed it to you, capturing your session and, depending on the service, your username and password. Then, as expected, you would get a two-step verification asking you if you just logged in.
Shouldn't SSL certs prevent this type of what did you use? Was this called domain poisoning? I don't remember what this is called, or DNS poisoning. Yeah, I believe modern day like HTTPS or SSL certs, I don't know how those things work together now, should prevent this type of poisoning. I think. This Ben guy is really smart when it comes to computer shit though. Like even going through this video up to this point, he knows a lot of shit. And I've talked to him in real life. This is a smart dude.
And you would say yes, granting me access. This means that when it comes to credentials like this, even with 2FA or MFA, a police surveillance company's security can only be as good as the least security-minded person with access to that system. If you're wondering how low this security bar can go with clients, you'll be disappointed to know that Flock Safety doesn't require two-factor
This is not the same thing? Wait, hold on. Let me understand how this attack works. I'm curious.
and nearly everything in between. But not all 2FA is equal, and different types have their own strengths and weaknesses. For example, some 2FAs simply pop up on your phone or your desktop and ask you if you've just logged in from a certain device or region, in which you can approve or decline the new device. This is an excellent security protocol if you're sitting at home in Kansas and see that somebody from Bangladesh just used your password. But if I'm sitting in your driveway in Kansas, or especially if I'm using your Wi-Fi using a device like this, I can clone your Wi-Fi signal and then send a deauthorization or deauth signal to your device's MAC address.
Okay, what is he cloning here? Wait.
Home in Kansas and see that somebody from Bangladesh just used your password. But if I'm sitting in your driveway in Kansas, or especially if I'm using your Wi-Fi using a device like this, I can...
Okay, if somebody's on your Wi-Fi, you're already pretty fucked, okay? If somebody's sitting on your Wi-Fi and somehow, it might be trivial to figure out the MAC address on a Wi-Fi, like a fellow MAC address guy, meaning people who have iMacs. MAC address is the unique hardware identifier. I believe it's the thing the DHCP uses, the software on your router will use to assign a local IP address to route traffic through, right? So if you have 100 devices connected to a router, all of them are given an individual, unique local IP address. I don't even remember what they are, 168.192. Whatever. Theoretically, if you can clone somebody else's MAC address, meaning you have the same one, The router should never send the internet pages to both connections. It should only be able to see one at a time. So I don't know if it would auto deauth the other guy or you send a signal to him directly. I'm not sure how that works. Or if the router would just recognize the new one.
Clone your Wi-Fi signal and then send a deauthorization or deauth signal to your device's MAC address. Either you will notice this and try to reconnect, or your computer or phone will automatically reconnect, and now you'd be accessing your own network through my device.
Oh. Wait, so does this device clone the hardware ID of this and the hardware ID of him? So what happens is this basically serves as it's like a access point or whatever, and then now he's connecting to what he thinks is his router, his internet, but it's actually his guy. And then this router still thinks he's connected through here, but it's actually connected to this guy. So he's trying to execute some kind of this is like a man-in-the-middle type attack, basically. However, there are so many different types of encryptions that I think should break this.
I could use a script to clone the login page of
So when you talk about
whatever credentials I'm trying to get, and then
cloning the login page of whatever credentials you're trying to get, fuck, is this called DNS poisoning or am I making this up? There's if you were to clone a thing so that when somebody goes to a given web page, I think the DNS is involved in resolving. When I type in www.bigdicks.com, it resolves that, translates it to some IP address. And I think one thing you can do is when people are trying to go to a certain web page, you resolve it to something different, and you could resolve it to a locally hosted page that's compromised. However, that I don't think you'll have a valid certificate such that when that page pops up on your computer, if it's not the one on the internet and it's the one that some dude is locally hosting, whatever, you're not going to have the SSL cert for the page, and it'll say warning, this is not safe, right? Wouldn't that be my guess, or am I wrong on that? I don't think you can just spoof a page like that, some locally hosted page, and your computer will interact with it in a normal way. It's not about a web page. I think it's showing a copy of the login page to enter your router credentials. Well, one, that's going to be a web page. It's an HTML web page. It's showing a copy of a login page and your router credentials. I think even the locally hosted shit on your router, I think these days, isn't that all HTTPS and has certs and everything? If you're on the route and the hacker's router, you can make them go anywhere you want, right? It'll start popping up warnings on everything because there are other ways to verify what's going on the website. The cookies won't match, so any session tokens or whatever aren't going to match what's being sent, and then there's going to be no cert. So oftentimes, I don't even know if the browser will let you. It might. It'll say warning, this seems like a not good website. If you want, you can click more information, and then you'll be able to click visit anyway. And if you do that, well, now you're fucked because you're fucking yourself. But
feed it to you, capturing your session and, depending on the service, your username and password. Then, as expected, you would get a two-step verification asking you if you just logged in, and you would say yes, granting me access. This means that when it comes...
I'm curious how this part works. So somebody else is trying to access the device, and then you get a thing that pops up and says, is this your device? And then you click yes. I don't know how that part works. You just send a bullshit website where they enter in plain text. They get the plain text and use it to log in for real. User. Oh, that's the part. Never mind. Okay. So I would, so not somehow. So I would make a clone of Microsoft.com and I would host it. And anytime you try to go to Microsoft.com, I would make the DNS here redirect to my local Microsoft.com webpage that I'm hosting on Apache. I don't know what the fuck people use, whatever web host thing. And then the login screen will pop up, and then they'll type in their login credentials, and then that'll be sent to me because you're locally running the copy of this page. If you want, you can go and type that into the actual website then as they're trying to log in, or you can even have this pass it through automatically if it's fancy or whatever. And then they'll get a two-factor authentication saying, hey, do you want to whatever? And then you click yes. and they'll be able to log in here, I guess, if you pass all that through to them. But more importantly, you now have a session token or the encryption or whatever. Now you have access to that account directly, right? Okay. Ugh. Okay, I get it.
Their name and password. Then, as expected, you would get a two-step verification asking you if you just logged in, and you would say yes.
There's DHCP spoofing and ARP spoofing. What is ARP spoofing? I've heard the term before. I don't remember what that means.
Me access. This means that when it comes to credentials like this, even with 2FA or MFA, a police surveillance company's security can only be as good as the least security-minded person with access to that system. If you're wondering how low
the fake website idea doesn't necessarily work. The browser they are using will check that the website you connect to is a valid SSL cert for that website. If you man in the middle of the website, their browser will warn the user it's fake. True, but if they click like next or whatever, they could fuck themselves if you're, yeah. That's called phishing. I don't think you would consider this phishing. You would consider this a man in the middle attack because phishing is more like a social engineering only thing. And this is like you're throwing up fake pages for them to log into.
would say yes, granting me access. This means that when it comes to credentials like this, even with 2FA or MFA, a police surveillance company's security can only be as good as the least security-minded person with access to that system. If you're wondering how...
That's kind of true, yeah, your weakest link, obviously. But this is why user controls or access controls are so important. If something gets compromised, if everybody's running a fucking root admin account or whatever bullshit, well, now you're mega fucked. But you should be able to limit data breaches or security breaches or whatever. Ideally, you've got good... I guess you'd call it what, access control, user control, whatever, to not have everything. Sometimes you can tell that this happens. So sometimes a company will get hacked and they'll send out an email and the email will be like, hey, we're just letting you know there was an account that was compromised and they might have access to like line item numbers of things that people have bought and like that's it or whatever, right? Now, obviously nobody should be getting hacked and that's not good. But like when you get an email like that, it's like, oh, okay, well, whatever got compromised, at least like everything is sectioned off well enough that somebody didn't get one account and get everything. That's good. And then every now and then something will get hacked. They're like, hey, so we had an employee whose account got hacked and your social security number, unsalted passwords, email addresses, and secret pictures you're taking of your cock are all over the internet. And it's like, oh, okay. So you literally had everyone on like a fucking master key control, whatever, or the admin, or the whole network got caught, or what the fuck happened, right? Sometimes people have really shitty things where if somebody gets into one part of a system, they have access to everything. Although I'm pretty sure most modern practice, stuff like that shouldn't be happening anymore, I don't think. ARP spoofing, an attacker sends forged ARP messages to corrupt the ARP caches of another device on the network, linking their MAC address to another device's IP address, e.g. the routers. Okay.
person with access to that system. If you're wondering how low this security bar can go with clients, you'll be disappointed to know that Flock Safety doesn't require two-factor authentication with some police departments. Yes, you heard that right. The security process you go through when you log into Disney Plus is just too much to ask some police departments to do when accessing confidential information and the location of, in some cases, virtually everyone. When I first found this out, I simply couldn't believe it. And neither could U.S. Senator Wyden's team, which is why it's among the issues leading to a request for the FTC to open an investigation into the company on the grounds of national security. Fortunately, there's a super easy solution to this, a USB or NFC authenticator. It costs as little as $10 and you just plug it in or wave it in front of your device for the second.
Hold on. His stuff is very dense. Okay, I have to pay attention. I can't. It's too much information. Okay. Which is good. This is good. Okay.
Virtually everyone. When I first found this out, I simply couldn't believe it. And neither could U.S. Senator Wyden's team, which is why it's among the issues leading to a request for the FTC to open an investigation into the company on the grounds of national security. Fortunately, there's a super easy solution to this, a USB or NFC authenticator. It costs as little as $10 and you just plug it in or wave it in front of your device for the second layer of authentication. And if this is too much hassle for an able-bodied police officer or employee to use, then maybe they shouldn't have access to secure information. It's really frustrating to spend this much time talking about a problem when a very simple and common sense solution to that problem has existed since day one. A concerning amount of hard-coded information is stored inside Flock Safety cameras, and we'll hear all about it in the next vulnerabilities on this list, but within this information is a list of Wi-Fi network names. So I set up a dummy network with one of these Wi-Fi names. Then, when removing the SIM card or when the device couldn't find an LTE signal, some of our Flock Safety cameras happily connected to the dummy network and routed upstream traffic through it. Others seemingly prioritized my dummy network by default, regardless of if it had a SIM card in it or not. So I captured the PCAP data being transmitted from one of these cameras for a little while and analyzed it with Wireshark and Unblob, which is an open source extraction suite. And sure enough, there were clear text credentials in the data. These exact vulnerabilities were originally disclosed by John in April, another in September, and with another pending. This attack requires knowing the name or credentials of the Wi-Fi networks the camera is looking for. But what concerns me more is that this information wasn't in an encrypted upstream to begin with, which means that by using a professional-grade SDR or IMSI catcher, which is more or less a DIY Stingray device, a malicious hacker could just hijack the LTE connection and then do the exact same thing without needing.
The reason why your computers and shit run so slow these days and everything's so fucked is because people do this cringe thing called encryption. Okay, so when you type the password on your computer, there's like I think the hash happens on. Does it happen on your end, or does it just maybe just happen? The data is supposed to be sent in an encrypted manner. So if somebody back in the day with using things like Wireshark or whatever, you could do things called like packet sniffing. So like if I can intercept traffic between two systems, I can literally see everything that's being typed between two systems. If you type a message on AOL Instant Messenger, or if you type a password to log into your Yahoo Instant Email or whatever, I can literally see those requests, or I'll see them like in the request, and you could just like open shit on Wireshark and be like a fucking master hacker. These days, they waste all your resources encrypting stuff, and it's cringe. I don't think there's any reason to embed information like this in plain text. So plain text just means that if somebody can read the data stream, they don't have to have a key or an encryption thing. They could just literally read the request or whatever. Although at this point, if he literally has root on the machine, he can probably see or read anything anyway, because he's sitting at one end of the, I don't know if you'd say encryption tunnel or whatever. I don't know the words, but
to know these network names or even being physically near the camera. This could also allow a more modern version of a Tempest attack, which I'll demonstrate in a few minutes, and that's where a hacker could decode the motion JPEG video stream. I actually tried to accomplish this as I love puzzles, but unfortunately time forced me to choose between decoding the pixel sequence or finishing this video, and here we are. When I recreated John's research on these devices, as previously shown, it was as clear to me as it was to John when he first discovered it that they inadequately protected credentials, API keys, passwords, and more. As I mentioned, the GainSec blog and the papers have a lot more details on this for the technically minded, but I'm going to use this segment to talk about some of the other troubling things that were found stored in the camera. On Flock Safety's website, it is stated that they do not capture or record data of people, but only vehicles. They also state that data and footage is encrypted throughout the entire life cycle, and that data is automatically removed from devices after 7 days. Speaking for myself, when I recreated John's research across multiple devices, I confirmed
Sorry, when I'm trying to be serious, I shouldn't say retarded shit. Encryption won't be why your computer's slow. That's true. I was just kidding when I said that. Encryption doesn't make your computer slower. That was a little joke, okay?
Exactly what he was seeing. If Flock Safety's cameras in the wild are operating like the ones we researched.
The irony is that most hacks are always on the inside of encryption, by the way. Encryption is only good when I'm in your house stealing your physical drive, but it makes people feel more fuzzy. Yes, in my opinion, encryption is one of the biggest, I don't know if you say misnomers or people conceptually just don't like. Encryption doesn't, funnily enough, actually, the expert witness in my case, Jesus Pena or whatever, makes this mistake when he talks about like encryption or unencrypted. A thing is encrypted, a thing's unencrypted. If you have credentials to log into an account, at that point, it doesn't matter. Your shit could be encrypted 50 million ways to Sunday. It doesn't matter. They have the password of the account, so they'll have the whatever sort of certificate or de-encryption key, whatever you'd call it, necessary to decrypt anything. You can encrypt it 50 million different ways. It's going to be decrypted if they can access the account. Encryption matters at certain stages of things, depending on how people are reading stuff. But if somebody has access to a thing, that generally functions as the decryptor thing. Yeah.
This would be a clear contradiction to their statements. Firstly, when I moved in front of the camera, the radar module triggered the camera module to take a picture of me. Then the onboard AI looked for a license plate and didn't find one, but it stored the image anyway to a separate folder. Now this doesn't seem to target people. It will also take a picture of my hand if I move in front of the lens, or a picture of my desk if I move the device. But what I observed were the devices intentionally saving the footage, not erasing it. Secondly, throughout the entire process of verifying John's research, I didn't crack or decrypt a single thing. Any of the information, footage, or data that you see or hear about in this video was unencrypted at runtime. And finally, when going through the files and temp folders of the Falcon cameras, we absolutely found images older than 7 days. In fact, John found stored images that were captured when the camera was triggered inside the factory where the device was made. So hypothetically, this suggests that if you had a camera deployed and
God damn! Sorry.
research, I didn't crack or decrypt a single thing. Any of the
Encryption matters with data in transit. If you're on either end of the communication, you already have access to the unencrypted data. Yeah, kind of. It depends. I don't know if you, that's not, well, I might be using the terms incorrectly, but like you could, for instance, encrypt a hard drive, which would mean that without being able to log into the drive or provide the password or decryption key, I don't know if that would be considered in transit, but the data would be encrypted until somebody knows the password to log into it. And that would be valid. You'd want to encrypt that data on the drive. And then encryption in transit means that somebody should need to be at either end of the data transfer with the password to log in, whatever credentials to decrypt the thing, yeah. Would that hold true for RDMA as well? What is that? Rotund Dapper Moody ass. I don't know what that means.
The information, footage, or data that you see or hear about in this video was unencrypted at runtime. And finally, when going through the file,
Fuck, I'm sorry. I can't skip through this. I have to listen to everything you said. Sorry.
if I move the device. But what I observed were the devices intentionally saving the footage, not erasing it. Secondly, throughout the entire
Wait, let me go back more. Sorry. Fuck.
sleep, when I moved in front of the camera, the radar module triggered the camera module to take a picture of me. Then the onboard AI looked for a license plate and didn't find one, but it stored the image anyway to a separate folder. Now this doesn't seem to target people. It will also take a picture of my hand if I move in front of the lens, or a picture of my desk if I move the device. But what I observed were the devices intentionally saving the footage, not erasing it. Secondly, throughout the entire process of verifying John's research, I didn't crack or decrypt a single thing. Any of the information, footage, or data that you see or hear about in this video was unencrypted at runtime. And finally, when going through the files and temp folders of the Falcon cameras, we absolutely found images older than 7 days. In fact, John found stored images that were captured when the camera was triggered inside the factory where the device was made. So hypothetically, this suggests that if you had a camera deployed and pointed at your front door, one could access this data and figure out when you entered or exited your house. For about as long as modern search engines have existed, so has dorking. So Googling looks like this, and dorking looks like this. And if you're really well versed in dorking, you'll start finding things that weren't necessarily intended to be public. I'm a pretty solid dorker, and I use it constantly for researching videos like this one. Josh, however, is a legitimate expert at dorking.
So I'm Joshua Michael. I'm a technology obsessive, and I founded NextNet AI, which is a all-source intelligence firm focusing in privacy and personal cybersecurity.
This is the exact Google search I used to find an exposed flock safety demo site, reveal how their system traces cars, maps patrol vehicles, and can soon build full investigation profiles on people. At first glance, it was a UI demo site meant to just show off how cool their buttons look. But as I looked deeper, it contained 5,000 lines of source code for a search platform, and buried in the code was a live API key.
And an API stands for Application Programming Interface, which basically allows a computer to contact another computer without having to deal with all the clunky things like user interfaces and buttons. The company
This is master coding efficiently is never make somebody log in or do anything but hard code all of your passwords, hard code all of your API keys into everything, and then you just fucking run it and be good.
clunky things like user interface.
Sometimes if you're ever using certain websites, I don't think this should happen for any modern site, but you should be mindful of this. I think it probably could. Sometimes if you copy and paste like a URL to a friend, you have to be careful depending on the site, because sometimes it sounds really stupid, but sometimes in the URL, they might have something where it's like API key equals blah, 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 blah. And if somebody has this unique key, it'll be whatever, as many digits, 3264 to be unique. If somebody sees that embedded key, they can use this key, plug it into whatever surface you're operating from, and theoretically gain access to stuff that you would normally want them to have access to. Some websites will have this in the URL, so you should be careful sometimes when taking screenshots of your, browser or sending URLs to people. But I think ordinarily, I don't think it generally should happen, but
faces and buttons. The confidentiality of API keys and tokens like this are sometimes more important than things like usernames and passwords, because in many cases, the token alone grants you the same access but without front-end security measures like CAPTCHA or two-step verification.
And it had access to over 50 private layers that I didn't dare touch because I'm too handsome for prison. I used open source intelligence to see what data is stored in ArcGIS. Let me show you some of the things I found. Police departments and flock safety are storing on ArcGIS. This flock safety map, it's obviously a demo, but it shows that they'd store registration data. So names, emails, how many cameras, in a field to attach files, whatever that may be. Carrollton Police Department, this is no good. The exposed API key may have granted us access to track live patrol car locations. Also on the naughty list is Aurora, Colorado, or maybe Flock Safety. I don't actually know who owns this map. It's Flock Safety, leaking another ArcGIS layer with officers' names, phone numbers, emails, and even their expected patrol areas. This is the worst one, coming out of Dallas, Texas. A map layer with 6,000 records of hot list alerts containing license plates, the reasons why they're on that list, the exact location detected, the camera that caught them, and the time that they went by.
so like if I'm understanding this, I don't know anything about programming, so I can't use like the programmer words, but like, let's say you're like making a program, and in a program, you might have, in a program, you might have code, ooh, well, let's put fancy brackets, code. And you might have like a login, can I say like function? Call to login information or something, right? You might have like, in your real program, you might have like this is going to make a call to some other function that helps you log into some fucking bullshit or summon some other microservice, some bullshit or whatever. But if you're working on a demo, then maybe for the demo, you just like, you hard code like credentials here. Pretend this is like better pseudocode, okay? Which, like, if you're making a sloppy, or if you're just making like a quick MVP, like if you're just trying to show a product off real quick, you're trying to do something, this might be okay. But it sounds like what happened is they're hosting like demo code online to kind of show it off. But within the demo code, you can very quickly and easily open it up and take a peek through the code. Ordinarily, well, I don't know why I should say that. Generally, well, I shouldn't. You shouldn't have access to code that will show you like login credentials. That should be making calls to other things that are part of a program that are like encrypting stuff. If you're lazy or if you're just working on some like quick product, you might throw some hard-coded stuff in there. But it sounds like they left a bunch of hard-coded API keys or credentials logged in here that work on other systems that are deployed using the same code, which should never happen. Somebody said that's ultra retarded. It's trivially easy to just use environment variables. Yeah, I'm sure there's like a best practices for coding where you don't hard code credentials like this, and there's like a standard way to just make calls to whatever. But I don't fucking know.
Reasons why they're on that list: the exact location detected, the camera that caught them, and the time that they went by. Anyone could Google, find this map, and trace these people's movement patterns for 5 months. Also going to note the reason category has someone in there for just suspect, and a bunch of others literally have no reason and are blank.
So let's back it up for a second. If you call 911 and the dispatcher deems it an emergency requiring police, most modern police cars have a GPS module installed that reports back to dispatch. That way they can efficiently contact the police nearest the event and expedite the response time. Flock Safety and many of its clients use third-party services that make sense of this constant stream of data, and all of that data is handled with an API. Just a few weeks ago, 2 security researchers, Alexa Feminawa and James Zhang, wrote a report discovering that ArcGIS had been compromised by a Chinese state-sponsored hacking group called Flex Typhoon. The report from InfoSecurity magazine states the hackers allegedly targeted a legitimate public-facing ArcGIS application. This is software that allows organizations to manage spatial data for disaster recovery, emergency management, and other critical functions. This is just a very recent example of what could be compromised with sensitive...
Wait, was that me? Oh, no, never mind.
Emergency.
Wait, is this Florida? This is not Florida. This is some other bullshit. Treasure Island. What the fuck is this?
Management and other critical functions. This is just a very recent example of what could be compromised with sensitive API information for geospatial platforms.
Tampa.
This is probably, in real-world scenarios, the least concerning vulnerability in this video, but one of the most fascinating ones, and very few consumer or security cameras, displays, or network manufacturers have the means or know how to test for it. At some level, this device that you're watching this video on is leaking non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation. And if the R word is unsettling, non-ionizing means no DNA damage. Phones leak it, monitors leak it, microphones leak it, camera modules leak it, most modern electronic devices leak it. But some of these leaking electromagnetic waves are resonating and modulating in parity with the signal. And if you can isolate the resonating frequencies, you can, with a lot of trial and error, decode the signal, or in other words, spy on the device. The Tempest attack is something that the CIA and NSA used and experimented with ever since World War II, which is how it got its cool-sounding name. Back when we all used CRT televisions and monitors, there was generally a whole lot more RF leakage, so it was a much bigger risk to national security. These days, a practical Tempest attack would involve some time finding and decoding the signal, and then placing an RF bug on or near the source, which could transmit the data remotely. You need a software-defined radio with a lot of bandwidth, RF probes, a directional antenna, and a spectrum analyzer. On the newer Flock satellite cameras, I noticed that there was an unusual amount of RF leakage coming from the camera module itself, the proprietary coaxial port, and the 8-pin DIN port on the back. Initially, using an RF probing kit, an oscilloscope, a spectrum analyzer, and a hack RF, I was able to isolate a few various ranges of modulated signals. Then I brought the camera into another room to rule out localized interference and tested these signals as well as common integer quotients of those frequencies. Using an RF probe, I found
you can still do this type of attack on keyboard, so you know, or so you get to know what people type. That's using like accelerometers and measuring the air pressure or some bullshit, I think. This is a different thing having to do with measuring the actual signals that are transmitted, I think, or leaking from devices based on what the underlying stuff that's going on, I think, on the boards or whatever, right?
An exploitable leak between 592 and 594 megahertz. Then, using a periodic log antenna and a 20 decibel low noise amplifier, I was able to point the RF gun at the device as far as 6 feet away and make out what the camera was capturing. In this case, me. Obviously, the quality and lack of...
So I was going to say this type of stuff should never work or matter, assuming you are encrypting something in transit, but these RF signals aren't about data they're transmitting, right? This is just literally electromagnetic leakage that is not necessarily even being transmitted, or
megahertz. Then, using a periodic log antenna and a 20 decibel low noise amplifier, I was able to point the RF gun at the device as far as 6 feet away and make out what the camera was capturing.
Yeah, that's crazy.
this case, me. Obviously, the quality and lack of color leaves a lot to be desired, but that's just because the software-defined radio I was using to pick this up just didn't have the bandwidth for that kind of quality. If someone were to use a professional-grade multi-channel SDR board with higher resolution sample rates, the quality of the Tempest attack output can
Well, it's being transmitted just by different means. Yeah, when I say transmitted, I mean, is this part of like a Wi-Fi signal or like a 5G network we're sending, or is this just like a leak where they'd prefer for it not to happen at all? It's not like being used by something. I don't understand the concept, I guess. I don't even know why those signals would leak. I guess just as a byproduct of the natural computational things happening on the printed circuit boards and the stuff that's going on maybe, I guess.
be nearly as good as its source.
Here is a paper on what he is talking about. Using deep learning to eavesdrop on HDMI from its unintended electromagnetic emanations. Jesus. In this work, we address the problem of eavesdropping on digital video displays by analyzing the electromagnetic waves that unintentionally emanate from the cables and connectors, particularly HDMI. This problem is known as Tempest. Compared to the analog case, the digital case is harder due to a 10-bit encoding that results in a much larger bandwidth and non-linear mapping between the observed signal and the pixel's intensity. As a result, eavesdropping systems designed for the analog case obtain unclear and difficult to read images when applied to digital video. The proposed solution is to recast the problem as an inverse problem and train a deep learning module to map the observed electromagnetic signal back to the displayed image. However, this approach still requires a detailed mathematical analysis of the signal, firstly to determine the frequency at which to tune, but also to produce training samples without actually needing a real Tempest setup. Jesus. So I think the concept is like if you have a cable plugged in, I guess everything is like emitting some kind of radiation or whatever. If you've got an HDMI cable plugged in, there's some like signal leakage that just happens naturally here. And what this is saying is that based on the signal that's leaking, if we capture all of the signal that's leaking and we have the correct algorithms to analyze the leakage, we should theoretically be able to map that leakage. Essentially, like when we say map, I think we're really basically just saying like decoding this leakage to create like some visual image that hopefully resembles whatever image the user is seeing here. Which is pretty interesting.
Source. But due to the high cost of equipment and the
This is why
knowledge
you
and
should
time
always use $500 diamond-plated monster cables.
the tech output can be nearly as good as its source. But due to the high cost of equipment and the knowledge and time required to execute an attack like this, most consumer device manufacturers and owners do not need to be super worried about this. However,
Wi-Fi is RF. It's not leakage. It's just a stronger signal than necessary from what it sounds like. Wait, this sounded like that thing that made it sound like was that it was literally just... It was not intended... Actually, wait, hold on. Never mind. If I understand this better, I guess every single connection in the entire history of the universe will always leak some signal, right? Like even in a world where we're not trying to broadcast something, if you have a cable that has connectors and this cable is plugged into this, you will never have, I guess you would probably need like in a vacuum frictionless world, you'll never have a perfect connection where you have a 100% efficient transfer of stuff down the cable. Some of the stuff is going to be lost and radiated, I guess, and as it radiates off, it's going to radiate off based on what's being transferred on the cable, and then you can go, okay, I got you. So everything technically, so the way that you would counteract this is through some form of like shielding or whatever, right? Ideally. You can't 100% shield a cable because then you have antenna. I don't know what that means, but okay. No, just eavesdropping on Wi-Fi is not the same as Tempest. That one is specifically for things that aren't intended to broadcast over the airwaves. Yeah, that's because of these signals. So the signals that you're reading on Tempest here are signals that are just digital data streams that aren't encrypted, right? So hypothetically, this kind of attack wouldn't work against like an HDR? No, what's the name of the thing? HDCP? Digital Rights Managed. This. So like, this is something that theoretically would protect against that type of attack, right? Could you not just have an audio device that shits out signals that mask these ones in a way that makes them unreadable? No, even though we draw them the same, sound waves are differences in air pressure that's being created when you blast a noise. Sound is just the vibration of stuff. Electromagnetic radiation is, I guess it's excitation in fields, something, QFT, I don't know. But it's not, sound waves are not on the same spectrum as, or shouldn't have much of an impact on electromagnetic radiation waves, I think. Okay. Sorry, but HDCP would protect theoretically against that kind of attack or read, right? I think it should.
Or if a device is being used for something related to national security, government use, or the knowledge and time required to execute an attack like this, most consumer device manufacturers and owners do not
HDCP is not too complex. You could always decrypt it in practice, but okay, gotcha, okay.
need to be super worried about this. However, if a device is being used for something related to national security, government use, or public surveillance, this absolutely needs to be protected against.
Wait, HDCP is not encryption. It's just a handshake. Oh. Oh, well, in that case, never mind. No. Wait, if it's just a handshake. Before sending data, a transmitting device checks that the receiver is authorized to receive it. If so, the transmitter encrypts the data to prevent eavesdropping. Are you sure? The Tempest attack was premised on the idea that you could decrypt the signal, so any encryption is irrelevant. It sounds like, even though you're saying the word decrypt, it doesn't sound like you're talking about decrypting. It sounds like you're talking about mapping, which sounds different to me. Like when you're mapping a space, you're just saying that one thing will always translate to another thing, whereas decryption implies the need for some cryptographic access, some key or whatever. I think mapping is different than decrypting. Decrypting implies the need for a password or credentials, whereas mapping just says you're gonna get a bunch of stuff that looks like noise, but if you can appropriately assign, this to this, you'll be able to make sense of it. Oh wait, demodulation is the term to use, not mapping. Gotcha. Read the specification section right below. Authentication prevents non-licensed from receiving content. Encryption of the data sent over a DisplayPort prevents eavesdropping of information. Yeah, this would. HDCP should theoretically prevent an attack like this. I think. That's what it sounds like. He should just try it. No, you wrong, you right. Good.
Manufacturers and owners do not need to be super worried about this. However, if a device is being used for something related to national security, government use, or public surveillance, this absolutely needs to be protected against. This is just my opinion here, but most of these things are entirely preventable and the result of prioritizing growth over painfully obvious industry standard security measures like multi-factor authentication. Another really obvious low-hanging fruit here is using mobile phone operating systems and hardware for a government surveillance camera. The Falcon, the Sparrow, and likely here, but most of these things are entirely preventable and the result of prioritizing growth over painfully obvious industry standard security measures like multi-factor authentication. Another really obvious low-hanging fruit here is using mobile phone operating systems and hardware for a government surveillance camera. The Falcon, the Sparrow, and likely Flex LPR devices, or the cameras you most commonly see all over the country, were running Android Things 8 or 8.1, which was discontinued in 2021, and that includes security updates.
Yeah, I was going to say, using... also, if I disagree with this guy ever, you should just believe what he says over me, okay? But I was going to say, using like mainstream software or whatever is not necessarily bad, because you run the benefit of having... the downside is that there's a lot more people looking for exploits. meaning if an exploit is found, or especially a 0-day, meaning somebody has a discovered exploit that the manufacturer doesn't know about or isn't disclosed to the public, then now your system is vulnerable because you're running that. But the upside is now you have a whole proprietary network that is like super invested in making sure their software is secure. All of that goes out the window if you're using out-of-date versions, though. Now you have the worst of all worlds. And out-of-date, the reason why it's important to keep, especially like firmware, operating system, really any software up to date, is that when the software falls out of the security support period, any new exploits that are discovered on the software, unless it's really bad and people are retarded and kick up a huge stink and make a lot of noise, are not going to be patched anymore. So now that's just going to be a permanent attack surface, I guess, that somebody can always use to gain however much access they can get into, depending on what that software is.
Running Android Things 8 or 8.1, which was discontinued in 2021, and that includes security updates. At this time, there are over 900 published vulnerabilities for this OS. Like, someone please explain to me why there are even cameras in the wild recording public activity that aren't even running on supported software. If your phone or your computer or your home security system stop being supported and you want...
Even if HDCP encrypts the digital HDMI stream, the analog electromagnetic emissions from the display panel's pixel switching or cable EM leakage occur after HDCP has already been decrypted locally. I disagree. I think that if you are capturing EM leakage from the cable itself, like where it connects, it sounds like that would still be encrypted. I guess if you could capture what's going on inside the monitor, then that would be post decryption, and that you could probably just demodulate that for some useful data, I think. Would be my guess.
...understood how bad this could make your life, you'd probably be inclined to throw them in the garbage.
Destiny, it's not that wild that these companies can create their own security patches for Android 8, though. Well, yeah, but I mean, like, now you're talking about forking your own version of... Well, I mean, this isn't necessarily the worst idea in the world. I guess you could, but now it's just on the company to do it. But then also, oh, they were talking about the monitors, not the, not any connection. Okay, sure.
The way this is supposed to work is when you discover a vulnerability,
Yeah, the problem is if the company goes out of business or whatever else, I don't know.
you attempt to reach out to the company and you give them a 90-day window to release a patch. No shout-out, reward, compensation, or bounty is required. However, after those 90 days pass, the discoverer can then post a detailed write-up. Alternatively, some go the bug bounty
You also have but then it depends on how complex your systems are. Like, you remember the Mimi, what was this guy? Fuck. What did he call this?
It doesn't, which means Wingman won't know how to talk to anybody.
This guy's a Kino channel. But like, imagine you have some sufficiently large-scale project, and now your particular service has fallen out of support or whatever. I feel like, depending on how complex your shit is, if you're going to fork and create your own custom thing, you would have to keep so much stuff out of date, or you would have to be... I feel like that could be a nightmare. I guess it would depend on how complex or sprawling the project is, if you're going to fork and create your own version, because now you have to update so much shit. Maybe, I don't know. This seems like a... I don't know.
required. However, after them a 90-day window to release a patch. No shout-out, reward, compensation, or bounty is required. However, after those 90 days pass, the discoverer can then post a detailed write-up. Alternatively, some go the bug bounty route, where you report it and get a monetary or reputational reward. However, as explained by John and Josh, this route has commonly started to include non-disclosure agreements. This means that even if the company decides not to pay a reward, the discoverer cannot legally disclose the issue publicly.
So they did offer me a bug bounty. It wasn't very...
I don't know why. It just sounds like the most retarded thing in the world. But apparently you have to be really careful when you do this bug bounty shit, because if the... I guess companies can just fuck you over. They call the police on you and get you arrested. It's just like really not good, I guess. I don't know why some companies fuck you over in that. And it's bad then because people aren't incentivized to turn in exploits to your company. Now people will just publish them or exploit them and make money selling data and expelling shit from your systems.
Legally disclose the issue publicly.
So they did offer me a bug bounty. It wasn't very specific, and it included an NDA prior to knowing anything more. I don't think you're going to improve cybersecurity as a whole through not talking about it.
Early February, I reached out. I disclosed, I remember, I want to say 7 to 12 vulnerabilities maybe for the license plate reader and the gunshot detection. They responded within like a day and a half and immediately asked for a video chat in which, I blocked.
The biggest issue in bug bounty hunting is getting banned by a CDN. What does that mean? Wait, what do you mean? Can you expand on that? I think you were super wrong, but I might have misunderstood. Something that I've heard happen before, I don't know how common this is, but like, let's say you're messing around on your bank's website and you remember, hey, I remember when I used to log into my bank a long time ago, there used to be a there used to be an old login page that only Android phones would go to. I wonder if that works. You go to www.mybank.com/Android phone, and you find out, oh, hey, they have a really old public-facing page that is like 15 years old. This page has a huge issue where their inputs aren't sanitized or whatever, right? Or I can start issuing commands to their database or whatever through the login. And let's say that I discover this, okay? Well, in the evil hacker world, maybe you publish this somewhere online, you sell this, you use this to infiltrate their system to gain access to shit, sell data, whatever. Or if you want to be a good guy, a white hack, white mage, nice person, you might email the company and say like, hey, you're a nice company. I see you have a bug bounty program. Well, I have a revenue-related, enterprise class X Delta. I don't know what the fuck they would call it. Some high-level bug. If I disclose this to you, will you pay me for this? Right? I'm disclosing it to you first. I'm not giving it to anybody else. I'm disclosing it to you, and then you pay me because I did a good thing, and I'm not going to make a bunch of money off of fucking your company over. And I've heard that sometimes what will happen is companies will go, they don't say anything. They don't really respond to you, and you're like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden, like, you go to the webpage and it's not there anymore. And you're like, wait, did you guys fix this? And then the cops show up at your house and like, were you trying to hack this? I was like, excuse me, what? I was trying to do the bug bounty thing. And they're like, oh, well, these people are accusing you of a crime. We have evidence that you tried to log into this thing. And now you're like, what the fuck? I've heard that, I don't know how often, that you accuse them of extortion. I don't know how often this happens anymore, if people still run into problems like this, but I think most reputable, huge software companies will have good, reputable bug bounty programs. Like I'm sure Google, Amazon will have things where you can turn in bugs if you find them, and they'll reward you. Some people even have, I don't know what the website is, but some people that do this stuff will have like pages where they can display like rewards or bug bounty catches or whatever. I don't know what the fuck it's called. So ideally that doesn't happen anymore, but I've heard sometimes you can get fucked. I've heard stories of people, I've seen read stories of people getting fucked by trying to do, maybe HackerOne.com. Yeah, fucked by that.
Talking about joint PR statements for the license plate reader and the gunshot detection. They responded within like a day and a half and immediately asked for a video chat, which was
bounty. It wasn't very specific, and it included an NDA prior to knowing anything more. I don't think you're going to improve cybersecurity as a whole through not talking about it.
Early February, I reached out. I disclosed, I want to say 7 to 12 vulnerabilities maybe for the license plate reader and the gunshot detection. They responded within like a day and a half and immediately asked for a video chat, in which, I obliged, talking about joint PR statements and so on and so forth. What ended up happening was they released a PR statement about a month and a half before the 3 months ended, so pretty fairly quickly, without telling me, without referencing me or referencing the issues that I ended up publishing. They also
so it sounds like he got fucked.
Never gave me any confirmation that anything was fixed.
There's something really unnerving about going on record with legislators or media and talking about national security. I don't fully understand what defines a threat to national security, and it seems like the type of topic where you don't want to make any mistakes. So I just didn't mention it and kept that term out of my mouth.
The getting fucked is only if you go outside of the scope of the bug bounty program. Ideally, use sites like HackerOne to find your bug bounty programs. Yeah, maybe. I thought that there was somebody that tried to disclose something to Starbucks. Wasn't there a famous one where a guy found, was it like a login for a card and you could use it to get free Starbucks forever? Am I wrong on this? Or was it Starbucks or something or some card thing? And you could just get infinite money on it? And he tried to disclose this for like 3 years and they just didn't listen to him. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? I thought there was like years of emails and they just never responded to this guy or gave a fuck about anything this guy was saying or anything, so.
And I just provided our research to those who could. And according to Oregon Senator Wyden and Illinois Representative Krishnamurthy, well, in their words, Flock has unnecessarily exposed Americans' sensitive personal data to theft by hackers and foreign spies. Part of my research was trying to figure out just how effective the adoption of Flock Safety and similar ALPR services have been at reducing crime rates or increasing crime clearance rates, and this is a deceptively difficult task. For example, let's do what most people concerningly do these days and ask Google and let AI answer it for us. Well, hey, there you have it. Let's maybe look at those actual sources, though. By the way, I want to take a moment to congratulate Flock Safety on their search engine optimization skills. It's so good that even services that only exist to help companies improve their SEO are like, bro, sorry, it's literally impossible to improve beyond your elite talent. This means that whenever you want to find information about Flock Safety or ALPRs or police cameras, Flock is going to be the most prominent and influential force in your initial results, and subsequently, so will the AI assistance answer. More on that hellscape in a future video. But hey, look, some studies. Let's check them out. Okay, so only 2 of these studies took place after Flock Safety was even incorporated, and they tell us nothing about the efficacy of surveillance or data collection. Flock Safety's website claims that 10% of all crime in America is solved using their services, which is a pretty impressive thing to brag about. However, the source that they cite this claim with was a research paper created by 2 Flock Safety employees that doesn't really outline regional analysis. In other words, crime has been dropping nationally in America since 2021, even in the last year. The first thing that I personally would want...
This guy is like a random, I think he did music a long time ago or something. I don't think he's credentialed in this area at all, but he's like that Peter Miller guy. He's very smart. He's got a good mind, but it's also like he knows things. Like he does a lot of research and he'll learn like discrete facts and everything. For 99% of people making a YouTube video like this, they would say, they sourced something published on ResearchGate, and when I opened it up, both the researchers were from Flock Safety, so I knew it was bullshit. But notice he doesn't say that. He points out that they're citing a paper. It is done by 2 employees. Now, that's not the most uncommon thing in the world. Oftentimes, you will fund your own research because you want to get the positives of your thing out there. But then he goes on to also give a big issue, a methodological issue with the paper, saying, while they say that some percentage of crime was solved, using these things or whatever, we also see that like overall crime rates, we're falling in the United States as well. And like, is there actually some correlation here? Are these cameras actually helping solve more crime than other cameras would? So it was. See how he walked through that whole process? All right. Okay.
By 2 Flock Safety employees that doesn't really outline regional analysis. In other words, crime has been dropping nationally in America since 2021, even in the last year. The first thing that I personally would want to look for is a crime rate and clearance comparison between cities that use Flock Safety services and cities that do not.
Oh, and he's even giving a suggested composition for a new study, or a suggested approach for a new study, a suggested modeling, how to model a different study. What do you like to see? How nice.
And when you do it that way, it's extremely difficult to find any meaningful changes related to surveillance technology in general. But there have been other studies not directly related to the surveillance industry. The National Policing Institute did a multi-site evaluation and said that license plate readers can improve public safety, but the technology's impact depends on its implementation. It could just be me, but this sounds quite a bit different than what Flock's CEO is saying.
Over 5,000 cities leverage Flock to solve north of 14% of all crimes in America. But Flock's story is an Atlanta story. We can now rest assured that if a crime happens in South Downtown, it will be solved.
It wasn't.
What?
In 2023, the Berkeley Police Accountability Board did some data diving and found that ALPRs in other California communities were sometimes more correlated with increases in vehicle theft and lower crime clearance rates. In the case of Bakersfield, California, it was only after ALPRs were installed when the city rose to have the highest motor vehicle theft rate in the United States. The board also noticed that Flock Safety had claimed their services were responsible for a 33% decrease in motor vehicle thefts in Vacaville, California, but were citing data from years before the cameras were even installed. Which brings us to Oakland, California. And in full transparency, I've been informally consulting with and sharing some of this research with their city council, who had just delayed a vote on a $2.25 million expansion to its Flock Safety network. Flock Safety's public website claims that their services have helped Oakland's violent crime clearance rate rise by 11%. Not bad. Well, actually kind of bad, because they failed to mention that violent crime decreased by 19% in that period, which is on par with the FBI crime stats for the entire country. They also conveniently failed to mention that in 2023, Oakland had a violent crime clearance rate of 3%, and that was later acknowledged as an error by the police department themselves, and this was a pretty big news story last year. And the Oakland Police Department were the ones to acknowledge and confirm the error in the first place. So how are so many cities like this failing to call bullshit on these types of claims that may result in millions of tax dollars being spent on these services? This is what I keep running into again and again when researching the efficacy of police surveillance technology. A private business will cite statistics that are often misleading, and somehow nobody from these cities or police departments seem to have actually validated the information quoted in the sales pitches. So all of this aside,
A few videos before this, he developed a method to create a method that creates small changes to music or images that is not noticeable to humans, but makes AI freak the fuck out. Well, that's super cute. When I went to, when I did a show with him, when I was at his whatever house thing, I don't know if he says where he lives, he was talking about research he was doing for that video, unless this was like 2 years ago, in which case it was the same one. But some of the ideas that he was talking about is there's a hearable range. I think humans generally hear from 20 hertz up to 20,000 hertz, from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. And that theoretically you can embed sound depending on the type of encoding you use for the audio file, but you can embed sound at higher frequencies, or you can embed sound in certain ways where you don't really hear it as a person, but when the AI hears it, and then tries to extrapolate from it to make new stuff, it goes fucking crazy. So you could theoretically like poison data with, with stuff that wouldn't impact a human reader, but it would impact somebody that was using AI to try to like parse a thing. I'm sure there's ways, I'm sure that AI is sophisticated enough to get around it now, but like imagine you create a website where you would you write a whole essay on the importance of freedom in America, and then in the margins of your paper, you just put child porn, but you like make all the text white. Well, a human reader might open this, and because the text is white, same color as the background, they never see it. But an AI parsing it might see that, and then when you're like, AI, tell me give me a summary of this essay, they might say this essay is all about child porn in America or whatever. You're like, wait, what the fuck? And so it's like, I'm sure there are a billion ways to do way more sophisticated data poisoning, but there's ways to hide data or embed data and stuff that a human reader wouldn't really perceive, and it wouldn't impact your experience, but it would mindfuck an AI because the AI doesn't have the same sensory organs that we do, you know?
Even if we're not considering all of these questionable data sources in marketing, sociology is an incredibly chaotic field of study, one that typically requires decades of adeptly sourced data to accurately suggest whether a technology or a policy change reduces crime. For decades, we've been trying to figure out if an increase in police can even reduce crime. So at the very least, there should be an independent, robust meta-analysis to figure out how effective private surveillance and data sharing is before we take money away from other resources to pay for it, right? And without getting too philosophical here, it is worth considering for a second that catching people committing crimes is very different than total antisocial or criminal events. Like a thief or a serial killer or a drug dealer or a drug addict is not going to see a bunch of police cameras and then just tap out from crime and become a plumber. They're just going to commit crimes in a more obfuscated way, which more often than not complicates the process of finding a reformative solution. By the way, what an exhausting amount of sociology studies have figured out over the last 50 years is that high levels of surveillance drastically decreases well-being, morale, and even workplace productivity. If you think about that for a moment, it shouldn't really surprise anyone. If you have a job where you think your superiors are constantly watching you and judging your every move, you'll be concerned with appearing to be productive instead of learning and developing your skills at your natural speed. Or consider this recent study that strongly suggests that high levels of surveillance causes a steep decline in voluntary visual.
Do you remember your redacted interview prep? Jesus. What was the frequency cutoff for FLAC versus MP3 320? I don't know if they asked you the frequency cutoff. My guess for MP3 320 is it's probably 20 kilohertz, right? That'd be my guess. Or it might be higher. Is it 24? I'm trying to think of where FLAC would cut off. There must be some answer, right? Does there need to be some answer? I would have to think about this a little bit. I'm not sure.
Processing, meaning that it quite literally impairs the brain's ability to process and recognize human faces.
Depends on the sampling rate. Well, it shouldn't matter. The sampling rate should never go above. Why don't I remember any of these numbers? Is it 48 kilohertz? That would make but that would mean that the cutoff or whatever is going to be 24. What the fuck am I thinking of? Why am I retarded right now? Hold on. Your stereo is, it's either 44.1 or 48, right? Or am I making this up? Yeah. If your sample rate is 48 kilohertz, then FLAC should cut off at 24, and cutting it off at 24 should still allow you to perfectly reconstruct the 48 kilohertz wave, right?
And once again, this is one of those things that you hear and you're like, what? But when you think about it, it's not all that surprising. When you feel like you're in an environment where you are intrinsically not trusted, you're going to be far less likely to make friendly or meaningful social connections with others.
Not me. I like it when everybody's being monitored.
And I'm sorry, but that just doesn't sound anything like a safe environment to me. And that's on top of an exhaustive amount of studies outlining exactly how and why increased surveillance decreases well-being and mental health. But some people seemingly only read the studies conducted by companies trying to sell them something. Meet Mike Johnston, the mayor of Denver. At first, it seemed like he had the same careful agnosticism.
Wrong way around. Oh, wait, do you have to double the sample rate to reconstruct it bit perfect? So the perfect sample rate would be 96 hertz, 96 kilohertz then, sorry. Fuck you.
Meet Mike Johnston, the mayor of Denver.
Hi,
At first,
Mike.
it seemed like he had the same careful agnosticism about flock safety cameras that many researchers have.
Our flock cameras are shut off to every federal agency, everyone outside the state of Colorado, everyone outside the city and county of Denver, and no one can access them other than Denver Police Department officers.
You could interpret all of the research that I showed you in this video however you like, but the way I interpreted it was that it technically demonstrated and proved that statement to be false. But guys, don't worry about this.
Could a federal law enforcement agency use this database to track someone down on an ice hold and arrest them? No, because the system is not designed to do that.
In just over a year of data of usage of Denver's flock safety services, queries openly admitting to be used for immigration services amounted to over 1,800. Mike even warns us of the grave dangers of cutting this data off from external communities.
I want to be clear, this is a risk on public safety. If you have someone that commits a crime in Lakewood and flees into Denver, they will not be able to find that person in Denver. You know, we had a trans woman who was kidnapped and murdered, picked up in Denver, murdered in Lakewood. We solved that crime because Denver and Lakewood could talk to each other across the flock camera database.
Except that didn't happen at all. He's referring to the death of Jax Grafton, which was not a solved murder. Jax's mother was more than happy to speak her mind about this.
I'm shocked and appalled that a public official would use my daughter and claim that Flock had anything to do with her being found.
Fortunately, as a result of all of this bullshit and citizen backlash, the Denver City Council overwhelmingly voted to not renew the flock safety contract. And in their council letter on the issue, they went as far as calling out flock safety's ethics and credibility. And I quote, "We do not believe that the city and county of Denver should continue doing business with a company that has demonstrated such disregard for honesty and accountability." Whoa, now hold on before you celebrate your renewal of faith in humanity. Mayor Mike Johnson sidestepped city council and signed the flock safety contract anyway, which council members are now calling a backroom deal with a known bad actor. And all of this shit happened just in time for police to drive out from Columbine Valley, Colorado.
You hear up to about 20 kilohertz sound, so you need 40 kilohertz sample rate. Not me. I hear up to 36, bitch.
To knock on a woman's door in Denver with a summons wrongfully accusing her of stealing a package off of someone's porch. Any guesses on what technology?
Oh, and that one guy is correct. He said the video quality is bad because the SDR didn't have the bandwidth. Digital video doesn't slowly degrade as noise gets worse. They just drop it entirely, which would imply it's a purely analog signal being picked up. If there's a signal and as you get further and further away, it's degrading, that means that you are picking up. That must be an analog signal and not necessarily a digital one, because a digital one will probably drop out completely. It'll come in and out. It won't just degrade, right?
They're citing as evidence?
Flock cameras.
You know we have cameras in that town. You can't get a breath of fresh air in or out of that place without us knowing, correct?
Whoa. Agent Smith.
To be fair, that seems like a pretty safe prison city. While the officer refused to look at the overwhelming dash cam, porch camera, and Google Maps evidence exonerating the woman, fortunately, the police chief eventually did. But this makes one ponder. What's the result when this happens to a 19-year-old black dude? Notably, this year, people and communities across the United States have been increasingly concerned about or opposed to the rapid expansion of private surveillance in their communities. A lot of people have been noticing more and more of these little black cameras with the solar panels and just assumed that they were innocently monitoring traffic flow or maybe giving a dispatcher a better idea of who or what to send to deal with an accident. But now they're finding out what they do and what they're capable of doing, and a lot of people are just like, yeah, f that. And
you know what? I have a theory on this bullshit, okay? My theory is that people are not actually that upset about surveillance stuff. My theory is that all of us agree that the rules as written is bullshit. It just gives somebody an excuse to get you if you're doing some real fuck shit. So like, for instance, at work, you know that you're not supposed to be goofing off. You're not supposed to be on your phone. You're not supposed to do whatever, right? You know that. And you even accept, yeah, that's probably a fair rule. But you know you're going to goof off. You know you're going to waste time. And your bosses know you're also going to goof off. You're going to waste time. Like, it's part of this social contract, social fabric, okay? That that's just like an agreement that we all kind of have. Speeding, I think, is a really good example of this, right? The speeding laws written at 70 miles per hour means that, like, the reason why we write it at 70 is so that if somebody's going 95, they get really fucked, right? Now, maybe it's safe to travel on this interstate. Texas, whatever, 85 is probably safe. But if some guy's going 95, now he's only going 10 over, or 95, 100 miles an hour, only 15 over, right? I feel like we write these laws knowing we have like this social agreement, right? Like, get the fuck off my back, manager. I'm working hard. I'm not going to be on like fucking 24/7. You're paying me fucking $7.25 an hour. You think I'm going to be 100% plugged in and engaged like an automaton? You don't own my brain. But as soon as you start sticking cameras in, that selective enforcement becomes mandatory compliance. And now we're looking at these things and it's like, Bruh, really? You're gonna fucking ding me every single fucking time I step out of line? I thought these lines were blurry. For instance, and I'd be curious if there was some way to like sociologically or psychologically study this. Imagine there was a city and they said, here's what we're doing. We're going to put in cameras on all the interstates to write speeding tickets, but it's only going to write speeding tickets. Let's say the max speed limit of the state is 70 miles an hour. It's only going to write speeding tickets for people going over 105. I wonder if the citizens would care anywhere near as much as opposed to like stop sign cameras and like pure speeding ticket cameras. Like if you go 72, they're writing you a ticket. I wonder if it was like, we're only writing tickets for over 105 with these cameras. I feel like the acceptance rate would be significantly higher because people would be like, you know what, that's fine to enforce. You know? I'm curious. I don't know how true that is or if it would or wouldn't, but yeah, I'm curious about that.
Now, every few days, I hear about another city pushing back and deciding to take down flock safety cameras. However, in some cases, a city formally deciding that they no longer want flock safety services or cameras somehow doesn't result in them going away. After finding out that ICE was using their cameras without their knowledge or consent, the Chicago suburb of Evanston decided that they wanted them removed. So flock safety then reinstalled most of them. And since you can't own a flock safety device, only lease it, the city or police department would be handling and potentially damaging private property when removing them. So now Evanston, Illinois is spending tax dollars on legal expenses for cease and desist letters and covering the cameras with plastic sheeting to protect residents from being tracked by them. But my previous video about this topic came way too late.
The red light cameras had to go because they couldn't defend them, at least in Florida. Defendant court, to be clear. I mean, now that I know more about law, maybe I should read those cases and feel like I'm vibing this hard. But my vibes truly feel that even a judge, every attorney, that anybody looking at is like, bruh, a full stop? You want me to come to a full motherfucking stop at every stop sign, every red light? Fuck that. Fuck no. And fuck this. And even the judge saw it and he was like, fuck this. I need to confront my accuser. Fuck you. I don't know. But I could be wrong. Maybe the legal argument is actually really solid against those types of cameras. Another good example, people that have personal devices in collateral areas that don't actually matter. Everyone knows, no one cares, but you can't say everyone's doing it or you're fucked. What do you mean personal devices in collateral areas? What does that mean?
And covering the cameras with plastic sheeting to protect residents from being tracked by them. But my previous video about this topic came way too late. Organizations like Lucy Parsons Labs and Sassy South have been pushing back for years. Another great example, Will Freeman, who's a software engineer who started DFlock last year.
Around a year ago, I was taking a road trip from Seattle to Huntsville, Alabama, and I ran into so many of these along the way in these like really small towns. I wanted to do what most cities weren't doing and actually tell people what these things are, where they are, and how many there are.
Will is more or less simply trying to keep a map and publicly accessible record of deployed cameras. I think this is something that both local governments and flock safety should already be doing, and you'd probably have a hard time finding anyone who disagrees with that, right?
I'd never gotten a cease and desist before. But luckily, before this even happened, the EFF reached out via email and just said that they were there if we needed anything. So I reached out to them, and then they were able to send a response, actually 2 responses, because their lawyers sent another letter back saying basically like, we don't care, we think you're wrong anyway.
Flock's cease and desist here was pertaining to trademark, which in my opinion seems like an absurdly frivolous way to try and bully someone to take down a website that simply provides the public with some transparency about surveillance that their tax dollars pay for. But Garrett Langley, the founder and CEO of Flock Safety, doesn't see it this way.
And then unfortunately there's terroristic organizations like DFlock, whose
I'm so sorry. Did I misunderstand something here? How can you call it torturous interference if the information is like just publicly accessible? Now, if these guys were like hacking your company and like invading your, like doing some crazy shit, but if it's all like publicly accessible shit because your software sucks. Also, hold on. Hold up. Does this guy look like a slightly happier version of Carl Tanner from The Wall? The guy who kills the one dude? I think I get this one. You got to give me this one. I think you got to give me this one. You got to give me this one a little bit, right?
primary motivation is chaos. They are closer to Antifa than they are anything else.
I mean, what? Are you okay, bro? Also, that was a good pause.
Where do you even begin with this? Firstly, if you're going to live action roleplay The Dark Knight, at least watch the movie up until the point where Lucius Fox and Batman both agree that their mass surveillance system is grossly unethical and intentionally destroy it. Secondly, using buzzwords like Antifa doesn't exactly invite rational or good faith discourse. You trolled this guy with legal...
Excuse me, stop. The Trudgelmer. You are spamming my YouTube chat. Stop spamming. Stop spamming my YouTube chat. Stop spamming my YouTube chat. Thank you.
To the point where Lucius Fox and Batman both agreed that their mass surveillance system is grossly unethical and intentionally destroy it. Secondly, using buzzwords like Antifa doesn't exactly invite rational or good faith discourse. You trolled this guy with legal demands and then publicly accused him of being a terrorist. But the key takeaway of this interview for me...
But that's why we have a democratically elected process, right? Like, we're not forcing flock on anyone.
Let me make something clear. My little farm here is not exactly in a dense urban environment. We don't even have sidewalks. I literally cannot leave my neighborhood to go get groceries or ship out a package without passing a flock camera and having my activities logged into a database that is shared to a much larger regional database. I am not allowed to know who has access to this information, and the people sharing my local information regionally or even nationally most likely do not know exactly who has access to it. I didn't sign up for flock safety. I never consented to it. I've never had an opportunity to vote for it. I do not have the option to opt out of it. And then after researching and taking some pictures of the cameras that are constantly photographing me and seeking more information about them, I coincidentally get cops in my driveway waking my family members up, asking weird questions, and freaking my neighbors out. Now I'm shelving educational video projects to pay attorneys and constantly have to make sure someone is around to take care of my animals because every day I'm not sure if I'm going to be fucking detained for literally not breaking a single law. We're not forcing flock on anyone. Lacks so much perspective and is packed with so much delusion and cognitive dissonance that even Forbes senior editor can't manage to keep a straight face through the sentence.
We're not forcing flock on anyone. May I help you?
Here are just a few of the many strange events regularly happening at Ben's home and lab this month that may or may not be associated
God, I've been
with
there.
this video.
It's somebody being like, what the f are you doing? Literally all the neighbors are freaked out.
Wait, who walks around with a wireless headset from 1999 on their head? What is this?
I think he's just recording video. Would it be illegal if I took my out? Let's just be honest for a second and state the obvious.
Oh, we had that debate.
These cameras aren't exactly little impenetrable fortresses. They're plastic Android cameras and compute boxes mounted 7 feet off the ground with hose clamps. And in many cases, they can be found in semi-rural areas where one has trouble finding a stop sign that doesn't have bullet holes in it. And there are a whole lot of people who absolutely despise these cameras, but we're being patient and we're taking the high road. We're asking our local, state, and federal governments to not throw our tax dollars at a fast-scaling tech startup before adequately researching the risks and rewards, and especially before vetting the hardware and software services that are harvesting our information. It might seem like my research and videos on this topic are anti-flock, and to some degree, because of delusional shit like this, they are. But we also should...
Wait, what did I say? Hold on.
Research and videos on this topic are anti-flock, and to some degree, because of delusional
AI startup Flock thinks it can eliminate all crime. What? Well, this is stupid. Oh, I understand. Ben thinks this is stupid because Trump already eliminated all the crime.
Shit like this, they are. But we also shouldn't deny that there's a long list of companies trying everything they can to take flock safety's place on the leaderboard. If somehow we all woke up tomorrow morning and flock ceased to exist, another startup would quickly be in their place promising to help police solve crime in exchange for taxpayer money. But do you want to know what I find absolutely outrageous? That over 80,000 surveillance cameras were installed all over the country. And
Fuck, somebody typed something in chat a little bit ago that I wanted to point out that's kind of funny. I wrote in the beginning of my abortion thing that sometimes when you're getting like very intellectual about a thing, sometimes it's good to take a step back and just think about what you're saying in the macro. I've used this example several times. So like in music, when you're doing analysis of passages and you're trying to analyze like key changes, or you're trying to analyze some piece, the chordal structure, you might look at a piece and you're starting to write like really crazy chords that aren't real chords. You're writing like major sevens and you're looking at like classical era music, or you're writing like just crazy like stuff that just doesn't make sense. And sometimes it's good to put the pencil down and then play the song and just listen. It's like, okay, what the fuck am I hearing? And you'll realize as you listen, like this sounds very normal. If you play and you back up a little, it's like, okay, there's a key change here. You can hear it. It's obvious. You hear it. It's like a sanity check on like all the crazy shit you're writing. Somebody in chat made a good point earlier about reading electromagnetic radiation off of the camera in order to decrypt it and put together an image that, in a way, that's kind of an argument of futility, because if you're ever in a case where you can read EM radiation from like the lens of a camera or something, You can also just look at what the camera's looking at. Now, maybe there's an argument to be made that a more finely tuned sensor could pull different types of information off or whatever. Maybe but that's technically that's a good point, right? Like, holy shit, if I aim this device at this camera within 6 feet, I can see exactly what the camera's seeing. And it's like, that's true, but you could also just look at what the camera's seeing, and it's effectively the same thing. There are other factors that would augment that same, but it's an interesting point.
Absolutely outrageous. Is promising to help police solve crime in exchange for taxpayer money. But do you want to know what I find absolutely outrageous? That over 80,000 surveillance cameras were installed all over the country, and I'm not aware of a single public audit of the devices, the services, or the technology. And if there was, they would have found the exact same low-hanging fruit detailed in this video. And that's the big difference here that we need to constantly be acknowledging. Your government supposedly exists to keep order, security, and safety for society. Flock Safety exists to make money. They're not a charity, they're a $7.5 billion tech startup reportedly preparing to launch an IPO. And by far, their biggest investor is...
No, wait, Ben said the plan would be to attach a dongle to the cable on the camera that transmits the decoded signal to wherever you want. Yeah, sure. Like I said, theoretically, there's other applications as well. Wait, somebody said, yeah, these vulnerabilities are going to be aware, but realistically are only going to be exploited by Stuxnet level operations. So the reason why that's not necessarily true is that if one of these vulnerabilities, never, ever, ever underestimate in ingenuity and capitalism, okay? If there's a lot of money to be made by exploiting camera systems like this, then what you saw earlier in this video where he was like, if you have this device and you take this device and you plug in this device to the blah, 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 right? If somebody realizes, oh shit, if I do all this, there's a way that I can make money. All of this shit in 6 months will be on a USB dongle and it'll just do it automatically. You'll plug it in and it'll do whatever you need it to do and somebody will be fucking your shit up. So if there's an exploit out there and it can be used to make money, there will be an investment of time, talent, money, resources into figuring out how to mass produce it.
80,000 surveillance cameras were installed all over the country, and I'm not aware of a single public audit of the devices, the services, or the technology. And if there was, they would have found the exact same low-hanging fruit detailed in this video. And that's the big difference here that we need to constantly be acknowledging. Your government supposedly exists to keep order, security, and safety for society. Flock Safety exists to make money. They're not a charity, they're a $7.5 billion tech startup reportedly preparing to launch an IPO. And by far, their biggest investor is Andreessen Horowitz. So this is pretty simple stuff. Should we trust civilian data with a company who is partially controlled and funded by Andreessen Horowitz? Well, let's see. Mark Andreessen was a board member of Facebook during the Cambridge Analytica scandal and was one of the people on the hook for over $8 billion in privacy violation settlement. A16Z's portfolio company Coinbase exposed sensitive information of 69,000 customers. Even the A16Z website itself had flaws allowing hackers to view sensitive information about their portfolio companies. There's so much. What else? LendUp was shut down in 2021 for repeatedly breaking the law and cheating its own customers. TELUS deceived their customers into thinking that they were putting their money into FDIC-insured savings accounts. Wise was involved in funding Hamas and pig-butchering crypto schemes. But no, I'm sure this time it'll be fine. I'm so sure that it'll be fine that I'm not even going to look under the hood. I have an idea, and it's a pretty obvious conclusion to all of this, and I think it's an idea that anyone watching this can agree on, well, except for maybe the people invested in government surveillance, but hear me out. If a private company wants to offer services to the government that are related to national security, public surveillance, or processing data that will be used within the public justice system, they will have to pay an application fee and provide access to any hardware or software that they intend to put in public. This application fee will hire a small team of independent security researchers who are vetted and unaffiliated with the services or products that they're researching.
One of the big issues here, I know Ben knows this, I'm just fleshing this out more. I know for a fact he knows this, okay? But one of the issues here is when you say the government, we're really talking about very different things. If you're trying to sell something to the federal government or to state governments, depending on the state, or to city governments, really depending on the city, sometimes they don't have the resources for fucking any of this. If I go to like hodunk towns in Nebraska, Iowa, Arkansas, Louisiana, whatever, like these people are not going to have the resources or even the know-how to hire an independent team of forensic experts to validate or verify some sort. Like they're just not going to be able to do it. If I was selling some shit to New York City or like LA or whatever county, like sure, maybe these things could, or state governments for larger states or the federal government they could, but this is an opportunity where the government could step in and be involved. Like the federal government could step in and make an approved list of vendors or something. Ideally, they would have to comply to some set of standards. I would say.
Small team of independent security researchers who are vetted and unaffiliated with the services or products that they're researching. This team will essentially do exactly what we did in this video, but with adequate resources. If problems are discovered, CVEs will be published and responsible disclosure will be followed, which would presumably help the company tighten things up without having to pay bug bounties. And if no major problems are discovered, then the company will receive a rating that will be valid for 1 year until they have to renew their vendor license and get a less intensive inspection. This is not too much to ask. You can't open
Also, just as a quick random aside, just because I will be forever triggered by Republicans saying that Signal is an approved app. The reason why SCIFs are important is this video covers one of 50 billion different types of attack surfaces, like some place that people access data or some shit from that could be exposed to some attack, right? The reason why SCIFs are important is because they try to control for a lot of this bullshit. You're in a secured, compartmentalized environment that is protected by a lot of these unknown things. So you're not going to have shit that you didn't even know had an attack vector or had some exploiter vulnerability, or that you didn't even know you were using it is being used to leak or exploit data from some thing that you're working on. This is why the argument that like, oh, well, Signal is a good app, I should be able to do whatever I want. You have no idea if the room that you're in is tapped, or if the if somebody's outside your door listening, there's a trillion different reasons why that might be a stupid, that would be a stupid thing to assume, and why we have secured environments to operate in.
Things up without having to pay bug bounties. And if no major problems are discovered, then the company will receive a rating that will be valid for 1 year until they have to renew their vendor license and get a less intensive inspection. This is not too much to ask. You can't open a hair salon without a license. You can't keep a McDonald's open without a health inspection. You can't legally drive a car past a flock safety camera without taking a routine driver's test and having a vehicle that passes basic safety requirements. This is an apolitical, common sense solution to a really big problem. I'm going to formally propose it to legislators I'm in contact with, and I think it'd be really useful if you wrote, emailed, and called your representative senators and state attorney generals proposing the same thing. I don't believe that humans are intrinsically right or left, but if you haven't noticed, finding objectivity in the media right now is like being a grasshopper stuck in the middle of a football field. I'm very familiar with Ground News. I've been a paying customer of the service for years. It's an app and a website that collects news articles from around the world and organizes them by political bias, reliability, and potential conflicts of interest, such as media ownership. Ground News themselves are independently owned and funded by subscribers like myself, and they're vetted by 3 different independent news monitoring organizations. So here's an example. Here we have this AI-generated drone illustration.
A problem with Signal, for example, is if you're a fucking retard, a journalist can take a picture of your phone. Yes, people sometimes will get so in their mind about security that sometimes they forget about the simplest attack, vectors. Like, I'm on the most secure fucking device on 52 fucking layers of blah, 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 blah. But you're like on a podcast entering your password and a camera just caught you typing in a thing. It's like, oh, right. Or yeah, on an airplane, some journalist is behind you with his iPhone 7 zoomed in, just recording your screen. Like, oh, well, looks like none of the encryption, none of that shit fucking mattered. They literally are reading your messages, right? It didn't seem to help at all, yeah.
Hovering over protesters, and it's warning them that they're being monitored by Predator drones orbiting over Los Angeles. Yes, orbiting. I suppose if people could believe that the Earth is flat, then people could believe that LA is a celestial body. Okay, so I head over to Ground News to see if this is even a thing, and kablam, it is. And then you can see these bias filters, which you could use as a sort of political compass or an amusing joyride to see how cooked we all are. Or I can easily see who owns the media source, and then their factuality score from 3 different news monitoring organizations.
The XQCD comic about a group of muggers beating up a crypto guy until he spills his password. Yeah, I'm aware that there's stuff... Yeah, torturing people or whatever is a thing, but like, that's like such an out there thing. You're like, well, that's, I'm not gonna get tortured. And 99% you're not. But don't think about just like, that's like an extreme example. There are a billion different ways that your information could be found if you're not like being fastidious with your passwords or data or whatever, right? Like it could be as stupid as, like theoretically, somebody could access your device and unencrypt everything on the drive with your swipe code or whatever, right? It could be as stupid as somebody knows that I go to eat at a restaurant a bunch. They go to visit that restaurant and they make friends with whoever they need to make friends with, and they are in an area where they can view like security footage, and they just see you on a thing, right? Like if there's security camera footage of you ever going to this restaurant and you open your phone, all they would have to do is see that one time on video, and now they have the decryption code for your phone. So if you're ever around them, I'm giving you this is like a hyper technical scenario. It could be just as easy as standing behind you at a party and watching you, swipe your phone. Like there are services, there are ways, there are vectors or whatever like this for attacks that. All the protection in the world, could theoretically not help you. Like this is why, in my opinion, I say in my opinion, I'm pretty sure these are common security practices. The best types of security are securities that can't be, you can't make a mistake. this, when at the beginning of my stream, ironically enough, we were talking about like, oh, why do you like two computers? Because I can't leak from one to the other. I can't. It's impossible. Yeah, I can't drag it over. It's literally not possible. The nice thing I imagine about SCIFs are the way that the room is set up or whatever. A person, even if they make bad decisions inside the environment, they can't fuck it up because it just doesn't work. You can't do that. One of the reasons why my little DDoS protection guide so long ago that utilized PuTTY and VPSs to connect to Skype so that you wouldn't leak an IP address. One of the reasons why that was such a good solution was because the way that it worked was in the Windows Defender files, you would you would localhost you would ban Skype from connecting to the internet ever. And then you would go to the Skype program and you would enter into Skype. The only proxy I ever want you to use is 127.0.0.1. And so since Skype is banned from ever going on the internet, it would look to your local host to see if you're hosting your PuTTY tunnel that's connected to your VPS to hide your IP address. If for whatever reason you fucked up something, if you didn't open PuTTY or you forgot, or you didn't pay for your EC2 micro instance on Amazon, whatever, if something wasn't working, then it would just not connect because Windows is literally borrowing it from making any connection. Things should theoretically be impossible to fuck up. If you ever have a security measure that relies on a user doing the correct actions to make sure that the security is working, my guess is that in all modern security implementations, that would be considered not good, bullshit. You would just plan for that to be it's not even real. I don't even think it's a real security. You can't do that, right? If it requires some action on the user's part to ensure the security.
Organizations. And then if I'm feeling brave, I can use the blind spot feature to see the news stories that my own personal internet echo chamber isn't showing me. And as usual, when I have a sponsor on this channel, any profit from that sponsorship will go to UNICEF Ukraine. Russia is actively targeting Ukraine's infrastructure, and nothing spoils the holidays like knowing that you didn't help children freezing to death. If you're into this, you could subscribe to get 40% off the Vantage plan by scanning this QR code or using my link, ground.news/Ben. In my last video on this, I talked a lot about ethics. I talked a lot about how ALPRs and AI cameras could be misused and how they already have been misused. I outlined how I believe it easily violates Americans' Fourth Amendment rights. And here is some feel-good information that you probably don't get to hear much of in 2025. This is a completely nonpartisan issue. One could use this type of surveillance to track people that ICE intends to capture or deport, or one could use this type of surveillance to track ICE.
Social engineering can only be countered with education, which is tough, and even then your institutions can be social engineered. True. But your counter to that is just compartmentalizing information as much as possible. That's like access controls. The most retarded human beings should have the access to the least amount of data, right?
To sabotage and warn people about raids. It could be used to track a woman leaving her state to get an abortion. It can also be used to track someone driving around during a lockdown during a pandemic. There is no civilian anywhere who is always 100% aligned with their government throughout their entire life.
I am.
If mass surveillance sounds good to you today, then it probably wouldn't have sounded good to you 5 years ago, and I guarantee you that it won't sound good to you at some point in the future. This isn't a right versus left thing, or a Republican versus Democrat thing, or an empathy versus logic thing. It's an authoritarian versus individual thing. Privacy is a form of power that increases your control over your own destiny. And right now, you're at a junction where you're made to be so scared of your neighbors that you might be willing to give up that power. Or you can simply say, no, I refuse to pay for my every movement to be tracked by my government through a for-profit company that hasn't even been adequately vetted to protect my security. But for this to stop, you need to use your voice and you need to get involved. There are links in the description to show you exactly how to do that. This video is by far the most time-consuming, impactful, expensive, and collaborative product I've done on this channel or with this nonprofit. Obviously, it would have not been possible without John Gainsek's incredible and thorough research or Joshua Michael's determination, ethics, and skill set. If you work in government and listened to that part a few minutes ago about setting up a research team to verify technology vendors courting for government contracts, both John and Josh's websites with their contact information can be found in the description. I also need to thank the exhaustive level of work from Ed Vogel, Sassy, Lucy Parsons Labs, my legal counsel, Albert Sellers LLP, and those incredibly brave individuals who trusted me with information that could get them in a lot of trouble for sharing. They put the safety and common good of society above their own interests, and I want to acknowledge how meaningful and frankly beautiful that is. I want to thank all the legislators, police officers, and commissioners who, instead of calling me a terrorist, participated in a civil discussion on how to serve their communities better. But most of all, I want to thank my Patreon members. It might not seem like it, but this video and the associated research, the fact-checking, the legal counsel cost tens of thousands of dollars. And quite literally, without the support of my Patreon members, independent research like this would be impossible for me. If you want to join the community and pitch in for more content like this, as well as a whole lot of dorky and sciencey and artsy content, and be part of an incredible Discord community and forum full of like-minded folks, and a monthly songwriting challenges, you can join for as little as $1.
Wow.
Thanks for watching. Keep creating. Bye.
Thanks. My professor used to say no security is 100%. Cybersecurity is about making data take more effort than the payoff is worth. I mean, I feel like that's strictly true when you talk about like how long it takes to decrypt stuff. But I mean, there's a lot of different ways. Yeah, someone in one of these CyberSec guys in my Kick chat There could always be a crazy 0-day, some exploit in fucking Windows that fucks or some crazy shit theoretically. At that point, I think, yeah, compartmentalizing stuff, having good practices, like forcing resets on passwords every 30 days or some bullshit, like stuff like that is probably... Yeah, it's very rarely, though. Actually, I shouldn't even say that. I almost talked some shit. I was going to say very rarely is it 0 days. It's usually just like phishing and stuff. It wouldn't surprise me if it was like phishing attacks and ordinary social engineering that were corrupting systems. But it could be that like a lot of the massive hacks maybe that China and shit were doing, maybe those were 0 days. I'm not sure. I don't know. Did you see the Game Awards nominees? E33 got nominated in every single one of them. Yeah, cute. Password rotation isn't recommended anymore. I don't think Destiny. Good, fuck you. Maybe not. Password resets every 30 days is so 2000 and late. It's all about enabling MFA, enabling conditional access policies to block sign-ins from untrusted devices and geofencing sign-ins to your Zscaler / corporate tunnel. Wow. In my mind, doing the expiring passwords... Okay, hold on. Before it says anything, there are two huge reasons why I feel like this is a bad idea. The first reason is that users will just simply increment their password in a highly predictable way that makes it worthless, number one. And then the second reason is that passwords become so obfuscated that you end up using some secondary, probably plain text or like off-system reader for a password anyway, meaning you write it on a fucking sticky note or you just write it in a plain text notepad or something. The password becomes far more accessible because you just can't remember it. Those would be the two biggest mindfucks would be my guess. Regular password expiry is a common requirement in many security policies. However, in the password guidance published in 2015, damn, how old is this article? Published 2016. Okay, it's been not recommended for a long time. Let's consider how we might limit the harm that comes from an attacker who knows a user's password. The obvious answer is to make the compromised password useless by forcing the legitimate user to replace it with a new one that the attacker doesn't know. Also, yeah, this doesn't even make sense because then, so what? They had access to the system for some period of time? What does changing a password even tell us? What information does changing a password confer to us at all? I don't even know what that... I don't even know why you would, actually. Actually, I don't even know at all why you would do this. Yeah, I don't know. Because if somebody had access to an account at one point, who's to say what? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know why you would ever do this, I guess. Let's consider how we might limit the harm. The obvious answer is to make the compromised password. The problem is that this doesn't take into account the inconvenience to users, the usability costs of forcing users to frequently change their passwords. The majority of password policies force us to use passwords that we find hard to remember. Our passwords have to be as long as possible and as random as possible. And while we can manage this for a handful of passwords, we can't do this for dozens of passwords. I can. We now use in our online lives. To make matters worse, most password policies insist that we have to keep changing them. And when forced to change one, the chances are that the new password will be similar to the old one. Okay, so there's one. Yeah, you just increment the number. Attackers can exploit this weakness. Destiny, it's to mitigate effects of potential unknown data breaches. That's basically it. I mean, I feel like when it comes to security, I feel like it's a binary, it's a binary. This has either been exposed or it hasn't been exposed. And you would never operate on some percentage basis. So for instance, let's say that there is, let's say that your computer system forces you to change your password every month. Let's say that 2 weeks into the month, a huge database goes live with a bunch of leaked passwords. And let's say then that your computer forces you, thank God, to change your password at the end of the month. Well, let's say that you find out later, let's say you didn't know, let's say you find out later, oh wow, my password was exposed for 2 weeks, but at least my computer made me change my password. That's so cool. while it's true that you're technically more secure in that it was only exposed for 2 weeks for somebody to have unauthorized access to your system, that doesn't really matter. Like, if you would still wipe everything and restart, because you would assume that good data practices, or you would just assume that everything was compromised, because it could have been. So I don't know what the fuck the point would ever even be of having, you know, a 30-day or week-long or whatever expiring passwords. You would just assume whatever was exposed has to be wiped and you start over anyway, you know? New password may have been used elsewhere. An attacker can exploit this too. The new password is also more likely to be written down. Oh, yeah, there it is. New passwords are also more likely to be forgotten, and this carries the productivity cost because being locked out of their accounts and service desks having to reset passwords. One of those counterintuitive security scenarios. The more often users are forced to change passwords, the greater the overall vulnerability to attack. What appear to be a perfectly sensible long-term. Okay. Witkoff retard OPSEC moment from just now. Steve Witkoff's initial reaction to the article, the comment has been deleted. Scoop, U.S. secretly drafting new plan to end Ukraine war. David Lawler and me report for Axios. Steve Witkoff, he must have got this from K. What am I supposed to... Look at the comments. People are guessing. Oh yeah, it was a stupid tweet, I guess. I don't know what this is with OPSEC. It's just retarded. I've seen, there's a lot of like memes like this. You entered Joe Smith's password. Maybe your email is joe.smith@gmail.com. This is like a programming humor subreddit thing. Palpatine trying to pick up what's left of gloopy Anakin on Mustafar. I don't know why. Thank you.
See this every day, and my prediction.
Would a $2,000 dividend check be inflationary?
Every day, and my prediction is that first quarter, second quarter, what we are going to see is we have brought the inflation down. It is curving down. And real income, the other side of that equation is real income growth, and we are going to see this from all this investment.
Wait.
Down, and real income, the other side of that equation is real income growth, and we are going to see this from all this investment.
Would a $2,000 tariff dividend check going to people be inflationary?
Well, there are a lot of things that are going to happen next year.
Is that one of them?
And that could be one of them. And again, maybe we could persuade Americans to save that, because one of the things that's going to happen.
Here's your $2,000. Why don't we just give them fucking treasury bonds or whatever? Just give them that then. Just give them like, here's your $2,000 bond. It's what's the kid you get like I don't know how. I don't think I think I bought treasury bonds a long time ago as a meme. Can you buy like a 3-year bond or a 5-year and just make them there? Boom.
Next year, the Trump accounts, every child who was born from January 1st for the next 3 years is going to get a government account that goes into the stock market. So every American child born for the next 3 years, starting January 1st, is going to have that. They can take it out when they're 18. They're going to learn the power of compounding, and there's going to be a lot of financial literacy around that. And I think the reason that we saw kind of the disastrous election in New York is young people don't feel like they have a stake in the economy. So we want to give them a stake in the economy.
We know that.
Sounds like socialism to me, Chief. What if Gavin Newsom quietly pushed for the trigger language to be removed from Prop 50 because he knew that the Texas map was a racial gerrymander and he would be struck down? The reality is, and the reason why I would never, ever, ever have trigger language ever is because I would never in my life leave it up to the fucking Supreme Court to make some bullshit ass interpretation of what a trigger thing means. Fuck that. If you put trigger language in there saying, if they racially redistrict, blah, 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 then I don't want some bullshit challenge. And then it goes to the Supreme Court like, well, actually, we looked at Texas and we found out that they didn't actually use trigger language. I actually spent like a week before I made this tweet. Fuck. I don't even remember what it was. How much money did I say I would give if Finkelstein could prove that I got paid by Israel? What was the number that I put? Does anybody remember? Did I put 100K? Did I actually? Oh, there it is. I actually thought a long time. Wait, was it a week? It wasn't a week. It was a full day. Why did I think it was? Oh, no. I thought about issuing this challenge a long time ago for a while, and I didn't do it. But then I saw this. He made the same claim again. And the reason why I didn't do it in the past, but then I saw him make this claim again, I'm like, fuck, is because I'm trying to think. He says that it turns out that an Israeli lobby group actually paid to get Destiny debate. So this is his claim.
I'm a book person, old-fashioned. And then he gets back to me about 3 weeks later, and he says, how would you like to debate Benny Morris? I said, sure. Exactly. It was so strange. I then thought to myself, if I refused, sorry, I'm very smart. He knows his stuff, for sure. And Benny Morris, this thing, I said, I'll debate with my good friend, very smart guy, Muin Rabbani, top of the line, and we have the same political outlook. So why do I mention it? A few months later, I'm having a conversation with a friend of mine, and he says to me, you know, Destiny was paid to be on with you. I said, no, nobody told me that. He said, yeah, he described it, because he was discreet. He described it as a Israel advocacy group, had groomed him to debate me, and had, I'm using the words he said, paid him handsomely to debate me. And it's an unimpeachable source. By the way, the person who told me this is not political at all. Just by coincidence, he could say with absolute certainty, and I know it. What?
So I finally bet him this time. I was like, fuck it, why not? But in the past, the reason why I didn't issue this is because I was thinking, like, what if I issue this bet? Now, obviously I am who I am, so I know that this is a false claim. I know it's 100% false. But, like, what if I issue this bet publicly, and then it turns out that, like, the one Australian dude, Eddie, that owns Kick is actually an Israeli-Australian citizen, and it posts on an alternate account talking a ton of shit about the Palestinians. And then one of the guys who emailed me for like research related to Israel-Palestine ended up being like him on another account or something. And then all of this comes out or whatever. And now everybody's like, oh, well, it looks like you actually did get funded by Israel because Kick and I'm like, are you serious? Like, I thought about this for all. So all that to say, because people who are not operating in good faith will always try to redefine shit or be sneaky or some dumb shit like this. All that to say that trigger language absolutely should not be in there, because somebody will find a way to reinterpret it or do some different bullshit to say, well, actually, what you have in here doesn't actually qualify, blah, blah, blah. So fuck that shit. True. But this is correct. The first version of that amendment into the Article 22 or whatever, or 21 of the California Constitution did have language that would have required it to be, to change the the redistricting way, the map, only if Texas did a thing first, and they got rid of that trigger language. Thank God. Chinese fan gave Hassan a booklet that contained a handwritten note from Mao Zedong. Press X to doubt.
By the way, while I was doing a Bilibili Q&A, I discovered that one of the fans that gave me a booklet actually gave me a booklet that has an incredible artifact in it, like a historical artifact. Yeah, I think one of the artifacts that someone gave me has a handwritten note in it from Mao Zedong. It literally has his signature in it. And it's not... I'm not even kidding. And I found it out because my translator was like, do you know who wrote that note?
Somebody gave you a handwritten note from Mao Zedong and you didn't even know until the translator pointed out? They wouldn't make a big deal about this? What, was this motherfucker just writing notes to everybody? Are there 50 million handwritten notes from Mao Zedong? What? Oh my God.
And she was like, that's Mao's signature. I mean, it'll be on...
That's his signature, dog.
The video will be on Bilibili. Yeah. I'll show you guys later. By the way,
it's not been felt yet, but the last week has been horrible for Republicans. Where do you think they go from here? Lost redistricting, lost MTG, and lost in the shutdown. Well, I mean, MTG can find her way back. We'll see. It's been pretty hard. The redistricting is just a thing right now. The appeals, the Circuit of Appeals has to hear it. I think that Fifth Circuit is generally fairly conservative. I don't know if there's any indication how we think they might vote. Although it doesn't sound like a good case for defendants in there, the state of Texas. But then, yeah, the health insurance premium is going up. We'll see. Yeah, I don't know, bro. The Supreme Court hears the appeal, no? Well, no, that the decision came from district court. So it's appealed to the first Court of Appeals federally, which is the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and then it'll go to the Supreme Court after. I don't understand why I feel so repulsed by Hassan. Like, I wish he didn't make me feel so uncomfortable. Yeah, it is worse than Asmongold. It's because he feels like incredibly fake. It's such a crazy doppelganger personality. Like, I feel like, I pointed this out before. I liked Chernobyl, but I would say that, Chernobyl was a very good miniseries. It was definitely very, I would say, propaganda-y, though, in like very stereotypically hard on Soviet-style management. Not to say that like the Soviets obviously had their problem with shit, and there were good people in the Soviet Union that tried their best, especially scientists and everything. But like the whole like, in this room we will lie for the people, and all the people lie, blah blah. And they also included a lot of stuff that was probably not true, like the Bridge of Death. And all these people that died, like this is stuff that there's no good evidence that any of this ever happened. But that, I feel like Hassan is a kind of person that I would see in a very propaganda-heavy movie where it's like, this is the socialist. By the way, he's a wealthy frat boy with dual citizenship that lives in a gated community in California and makes millions of dollars as an idol, wearing $10,000 outfits, unique ones every single day, who dates another popular movie star, who travels the world talking about espousing the evils of capitalism while he gets hand-guided tours from the Communist Party of China. It's like, okay, like, Jesus Christ, like, it's so heavy-handed. We get it, okay? They're a hypocrite. Like, you can be so much more subtle. You're so on the net. Like, that, it just feels like super gross weird about it, yeah.
heights by formally. That's why tonight I'm pleased to announce that we're taking our military cooperation to even greater heights by formally designating Saudi Arabia as a major non-NATO ally, which is something that is...
Have we done this before? We did this with Qatar as well, where we have like, we're giving security guarantee. I think we did this with Qatar. I don't think I heard anybody talk about this, but I think we told Qatar we basically have like an aggression pact with them to where if they get attacked, we said that we'll step in and defend them. It was like a NATO promise almost. Like, wait, what the fuck? We're doing this with Saudi Arabia as well. Okay, that's interesting, I guess.
Formally designating Saudi Arabia as a major non-NATO ally, which is something that is...
Same status as Israel? Do we have that status with Israel? Hold on, let me check. Major non-NATO ally. Let's check. Current major non-NATO allies. The following countries are listed in chronological order. Oh, okay. We do have these. Australia, Egypt, Israel, Japan, South Korea, New Zealand, Jordan, Argentina, Bahrain, the Philippines, Taiwan, Thailand, Kuwait, Morocco, Pakistan, Tunisia, Brazil, Colombia, Qatar, and Kenya, and then Saudi Arabia. Qatar was under Joe Biden. Wait, what does this mean? Are countries that have strategic working relationships with the United States while not being members of NATO? Oh, no, wait, hold on. This is not a mutual defense pact. Didn't we establish something more with Qatar? Didn't we establish Qatar, United States agreement? Somebody can tell me if this is a different thing than the... Because The United States shall regard any armed attack on the territory, sovereignty, or critical infrastructure of the state of Qatar as a threat to the peace and security of the United States. In the event of such an attack, the United States shall take all lawful and appropriate measures, including diplomatic, economic, and, if necessary, military, to defend the interests of the United States and of the state of Qatar, and to restore peace and stability. I don't think we have this. Do we have this with other countries, non-NATO countries? Who? Can you show me this, or... Qatar explicitly doesn't have military protection. Biden designates Qatar and Colombia as major non-NATO. Well, yeah, this major non-NATO ally thing seems like it explicitly is not. It says it here, at least in the Wikipedia, does not automatically constitute a mutual defense pact with the U.S. It does confer a variety of military and financial advantages that are otherwise unobtainable by non-NATO countries, and it denotes strong diplomatic and economic ties. Japan and Korea. Oh, we have a special trilateral pact with them. The Qatari Defense Pact was via an EO, so it is only really worth the paper it was written on. In a way, I understand what you're saying, and I would ordinarily agree with that, because executive orders are not law. They definitely don't constitute new law. However, it's the president who signs an EO who is the commander-in-chief. So I wouldn't say this like in a legal sense, but I would personally say that an executive order that's concerning military power, I would say is probably something to always be taken quite seriously, right? Maybe more so than other types of executive orders. I don't think we have this type of pact with Israel. I'd be very curious if somebody could find out. I don't think we give security guarantees to Israel like that. I don't know if we do with anybody else. Or no, we have this trilateral pact. So maybe there are a couple specific pacts we do, but this is a pretty exceptional thing when I saw this with Qatar. But somebody can, maybe we do with our Five Eyes allies. So it'd be Australia, New Zealand, obviously Britain, and Canada. But, yeah, I don't know. Why are you guys putting... Oh, never mind. We also have them with the Philippines. Oh, collective defense arrangements. This only goes to 2017. It is unprecedented with Qatar. Oh, they say unprecedented security guarantee. Kind of weird. Jacob Collier. Slop. My favorite slop. I hate this guy so fucking much. Oh no. Uh-oh. Oh, man.
Very important to them, and I'm just telling you now for the first time because I wanted to keep a little secret for tonight. I just heard him say, oh, that's nice. That's another point you won today. And signing a historic strategic defense agreement, which we just signed a little while ago. So congratulations. It's out here. That's what.
Like, it's an EO, I guess, right? This isn't ratified by the Senate. Like, what are we doing here? Is a bribe? Like, is he personally enriching himself because of business dealings that Witkoff, like, again, this is stuff I'd normally say that's kind of conspiratorial, but like, I don't think you can't really do, like, you shouldn't be able to do huge security guarantees like this via executive order, although it's Trump, so he can, right? Because he's the president and he commands the military, but like, this is bullshit. He's selling F-35 to Saudi Arabia, so to go through the proper channels. Remember, anything that can be granted by an EO can be rescinded by an EO, so... Destiny, I'm glad you hate this fuck even as a musician. I don't hate Jacob Collier, okay? He's just... He's just the embodiment of the fedora. Okay. At Destiny, the relationship we have with Qatar Trump created is the same we have with Taiwan, which is an ambiguous defense blanket via executive arrangements. Wait, I thought, do we not have a formal treaty with Taiwan? We have a Taiwan Relations Act. Which is, what does this do? The TRA does not guarantee or relinquish the U.S. intervening military if the PRC attacks and invades Taiwan, as its primary purpose to ensure that Taiwan policy will not be changed unilaterally by the U.S. president and ensure any decision to defend Taiwan will be made by the consent of Congress. The act states that the U.S. will make available to Taiwan such defense articles and defense services in such quantity as may be necessary. So I feel like this is like a it's a congressional thing. It's an act. Jesus. What? Sorry. Oh no. When you meet a guy who's also interested in history, what kind of history guy are you? I just think that World War II is the... Oh, wait. I clicked this earlier. Researcher says Starbucks threatened him over gift card exploit. The expert acquired 3 $5 Starbucks gift cards to conduct tests. He exploited the security bug to make 2 simultaneous $5 transfers from one card to another, which resulted in the recipient card having a $15 balance. To ensure that the money he obtained using the exploit was real, Homakov used the $5 and the $15 cards to make a purchase at Starbucks. The researcher then deposited $10 from his credit card to avoid legal problems. Once he made sure the exploit worked, Homakov attempted to report his findings at Starbucks by sending an email to informationsecurityservices@starbucks.com. He sent an email on March 23rd, but didn't get a reply until April 29th. After trying really hard to find anyone who cares, I managed to get this bug fixed in like 10 days. He explained in a blog post. Starbucks addressed the vulnerability, but the researcher says the company wasn't too happy with the way he tested his findings. The unpleasant part is a guy from Starbucks calling me with nothing like thanks, but mentioning fraud and malicious actions instead. Sweet. Did you see this? Hitler had a micropenis according to Geneticists. Here's a 2-minute, 43-second video explaining it. What? New study reveals Hitler had a genetic sexual disorder.
A new DNA study is shining a surprising light on one of the history's most infamous figures. Yes, Adolf Hitler. Researchers...
Is this an AI channel? NDTV. Okay. This guy has his own blog. I think my favorite customer service meme of all time. This is an old one. Does anyone else born in the 80s or early 90s? Is the is it Verizon or was it AT&T?
Looks like you're...
This guy was going to travel, and mobile data back then was so expensive. But the quote for mobile data, the written quote was for, I think it was like 0.02 cents, but the per megabyte or something. But it wasn't 0.02 cents. It was $0.02. Wait. Somebody said, is this fake? Hold on, wait. You're making me paranoid. Now I have to check real quick. I think it was real.
You're questioning some kilobyte usage that was done while in Canada. $0.002.
Do you recognize that there's actually...
0.002 cents.
Yes. Do you recognize there's a difference between those two numbers?
No. $0.002 and $0.002 cents.
Yes. Is there a difference between...
They're both the same if you look at them on paper-wise.
No, they're not, actually.
So if you take 0.002...
Cents, remember, it's cents.
...times 35,896... $71.79.
No, that would be 71 cents. How much should I be charged?
By the way this is calculated, $71.79. 79 cents. You're paying 2/10 of a penny per kilobyte.
2/10. Hold on. 2/10 of a penny would be 0.2 cents. You quoted me 0.002 cents. So which is the real rate?
0.002, sir.
0.002 what?
Cents per kilobyte.
So you just said it was 0.2 pennies. And then you also said it's 0.002 cents. Those are two completely different numbers. They're 100-fold different.
George, hold on 1 second for
Sure.
me, okay?
This is Andrea. I'm a manager on the floor. How can I help you today?
Hi. Do you recognize that there's a difference between $1 and 1 cent?
Definitely.
Do you recognize there's a difference between half a dollar and half a cent?
Definitely.
Then do you therefore recognize there's a difference between $0.002 and 0.002 cents?
No.
I'm teaching math here.
And I mean, I'm trying to get what you're saying here, but it's just not
And we're talking about cents, right?
right. 0.002. If we multiply that by the amount of kilobyte usage that you have,
35893
35893, that comes out to what you paid, 71.79.
cents. You never did the conversion from cents to dollars.
I don't know. I'm not a mathematician.
0.002 cents times my 35,893 is a number, but it's still in cents.
We're not quoting $0.002. We're quoting 0.002 cents.
Oh, God. Honestly.
Well, I mean, it's obviously a difference of opinion.
It's not opinion. Okay, well, you know what? I'm going to post this recording on my blog.
My blog.
And
And that's what you want to do. That's fine.
that's what I'm going to do. And then you guys all at Verizon can learn.
Jesus. Stone, Parasite, Grape, Joker. Cringe cutie clip about the girl.
She's going through a lot, man. And shout out to Cutie. She called me off stream after that whole clip shit and was like, yeah, I'm sorry about that whole situation. My clip got, she didn't get the clip, obviously, bro. She's mad busy. I knew that too, but initially I just got mad, bro, because that was crazy. That was crazy. I told her it was crazy. But she called me, apologized, and was like, yeah, the guy that got the clip, I fired him. He thought that that girl in the first clip was one of your big collabs. Vinny, they were the 50 Gifted, one of the Haas sisters.
The what? One of the
50 Gifted, 50
one of the hostages?
Gifted, one of the Haas sisters.
Hostisters?
She's
Why am I even linked to this? I don't care.